Good evening and welcome to the Grand Forks City Growth Fund Jobs Development Authority for Monday, July 20th, 2020. Item 1, general business and roll call.
Weigel.
Here.
Doppler.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Mock.
Here.
Kavami.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
Veen.
Here.
Mayor Bochinski.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Quorum. Okay. Item 2, JDA action items. Item 2.1.
Northern Tier Seed corrected PACE loan amount.
Ms. Richards.
Good evening. As your updated staff report states, there was an error in the original requested loan amount. The original request understated the actual amount needed by about $4,000. Since the actual amount is higher, we did want to make sure that the corrected higher amount was brought back to committee so we could get it approved at the actual amount, which is the $65,579 in the staff report.
Okay, before I open the public hearing, any questions? If not, I'll open the public hearing for item 2.1. Any comments? Have we received any
No comments received.
comments? Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and look for a motion
I'll move approval.
by Mr. Weigel. Second? Second, Ms. Kwame. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2.2.
Mr. College of Business and Public Administration Investment Partnership.
Okay, Mr. Phelan, did you?
Mr. Dean? I'd like, if it's possible, could I have a motion to be recused from this
Yes,
item?
do I have a motion to recuse Mr. Sandy? Got a motion from Ms. Jeannie Mock, and a second from Mayor Bochinski. All those in the favor of recusing Mr. Sandy? Say aye.
Sure.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, the same sign? Motion carries, you're recused. Okay, so now we'll go back to the motion, or to the main item. Do we have a motion to,
Mr. Bean,
yes?
just real quick, I just asked Mr. Gosted, I know I'm employed by the University of North Dakota, and I believe some others are, but I'd just like Mr. Gosted's legal expertise on voting on the matter, so.
Sure. I have looked at the issue. When there's a potential for a conflict of interest where you've got either a direct or indirect personal interest in the outcome of a decision on a governing body that you sit on, one, you're to disclose the conflict, and two, there is a potential that the conflict rises to a level where it would necessitate a vote of the other non-conflicting members of the board that you're sitting on to approve the person that has declared the conflict to be able to participate in the vote. One of the issues is whether Mr. Weigel's employment is sufficient to give rise to even a conflict that would necessitates disclosure, but it may not necessitate a vote by the non-conflicting members. And the factors, there's an Attorney General's opinion dating back to 1995, it's opinion 95-06, and the factors that give rise to whether a vote would be necessary if there's a conflict is whether the compensation or job security of the conflicting member would be at stake with respect to the outcome of the matter, and I understand that not to be the case. The second is that the conflicting member would receive some sort of personal or financial benefit as a result of the outcome of the decision. I understand that not to be the case. And the other factor is whether the contract involves the conflicting member or not. In the Attorney General's opinion, the contract was between the two governmental entities. Here, it's similar in that any contract would be between the city and the Alumni Association of the University of North Dakota, and not Mr. Weigel himself. So I don't think that it's a conflict that would warrant a vote. I think Mr. Weigel can still participate, but I would leave it up to the JDA board members as to whether you want to put it to a vote, is to allow him to participate in the vote. That is a conservative approach. It provides the protection, I think, that in case anybody ever questions the conflict.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anybody have an issue with Mr. Weigel being a part of this vote? Because I certainly don't.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You'd actually have to have a motion and a vote on the matter if you.
I motion to allow. To allow him, okay? We have a motion by Mr. Boshinsky, seconded by Ms. Mock. Any other questions on that? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anything opposed, same sign? Motion carries unanimously.
Are we needing a separate motion for each of us that has some connection to UND then?
To the extent that the board members are, and I'm sorry to interject, I think that was directed at me anyways, but to the extent that you believe that the board members, the JDA board members believe that it would be appropriate to have that type of vote, then it would be by person.
By person.
Yes. So those that may believe that they have a conflict of interest should disclose it. And then I trust that none of the answers or none of the questions I posed with respect to compensation or job security are dependent upon the outcome of the decision today, or that nobody's receiving a personal financial benefit. So I think there still is not going to be a conflict, but if the board wants to do that, I think they could do that. And what I would suggest doing is you could probably do it for the other. I think there's two others that may have this potential conflict, and you could do it, both of them in one motion, and have everybody else vote on whether they allow them to participate in the matter.
Okay, excuse me. So Mr. Sandy, we've already voted, is not eligible to vote on this.
Mr. Veen, could I ask a question? When you say you need to declare, what do you exactly do you mean by that?
That you, for example, if you work for the University of North Dakota, there's a potential for a conflict of interest. That's a declaration that you've advised the other board members that there's a potential for a conflict of interest.
So do I need to specifically specify what my potential conflict is?
Yes.
So the vote that was taken for me isn't valid?
It didn't say that.
No.
If you wanted to participate, I think you could.
If I wanted to participate, okay.
Okay. So, Mr. Sandy, you're not participating. Mr. Weigel, you are. Now, I think, as was stated, are there others who feel that they may have to declare some level of conflict, right?
Correct.
As a part of this.
Yeah, Mr. Veen, if I may?
Yes, please.
I'm an employee at the University of North Dakota. I do not believe that I have any of the conflicts under the three categories mentioned by Mr. Gaustad, but having taken a conservative approach with Mr. Weigel, I would ask that both myself and perhaps Ms. Dockler receive the same consideration.
Okay.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay. Anybody else that wants to be a part of this motion? Okay. So we have both Katie Dockler and Brett Weber, who are declaring, maybe I should say they're non-conflict, although there could be the perception. Is there a motion to approve their voting on this matter? Got a motion by Kwame, second by Mayor Boshinsky. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have the motion before us. Mr. Phelan?
JDA Vice President Veen, I thought it would be a good idea if Mr. Gosted would provide an overview of the agreement that's in front of you, and then open it up for Q&A, if you're good with that.
Mr. Gostin?
Sure. The agreement that's been sent around is a draft agreement that I put together. It's been sent to the Alumni Association attorney, and with direction that it also be sent to somebody representing the University of North Dakota, as well as the State Higher Ed Board. The reason for the University of North Dakota and the Higher Ed Board to be a participant in this is because part of the transaction involves use of property that will ultimately be owned by the state of North Dakota through the University of North Dakota, and the State Higher Ed Board's supervisory role in that capacity. So to assure that we've got the right parties, they were listed as a party to the agreement, as well as the Alumni Association. The recitals just basically go through what the growth fund, or excuse me, the JDA is allowed to do under the ordinance. It also describes a statute that allows for use of property that's owned by the state and political subdivisions entering into it. Just kind of lays out procedurally and factually how we got to this spot. So that's the purpose of the recitals. And they're lengthy, but I thought it was important so that if we ever looked at this 10, 15 years from now, people understood how we got here. Section 2 really is the grant or the conveyance of the funds from the JDA, and I call it the growth fund. There are several defined terms in here. The $1.3 million payable over a period of 10 years. You'll see that the date is, the payments have not been inserted yet. I've indicated to the attorney for the Alumni Association that once the agreement is put into place, I would expect that the direction would be that the first payment would be due or paid relatively in short order. The funds are to be used for the construction of the Nistler building. We did put in, dates certain as to when we'd expect the building to be completed, and again, that's something that would have to be inserted. I don't have the information as to the expectation date, although I understand it's the fall of 2022, but as you know, things can change with respect to construction. So Section 2 is really the granting, the conveyance of the fund part of the transaction. The Section 3 then deals with the use of the city workforce center. I believe it's 480 some odd square feet right now is what's anticipated. The city would have, as drafted, and again, this is a draft document, would have the exclusive use of that space, subject, however, to UND using it when there wouldn't be a conflict with the city's use, essentially. It also calls for the use of the other first floor areas of that building, and it's kind of the flip side of things where the city would have to request, or the growth fund would have to request the use of those space, and as long as it doesn't conflict with UND scheduling, we'd work some method out for that usage. I didn't put in any type of precise detail as to how you'd make those requests. I thought the parties could work that out outside of the terms of the agreement. As far as the length of time for the use of the workforce center, there isn't a date certain as to how long that would last, but I did indicate to the attorney for the Alumni Association that I thought it would extend at least a 50-year period of time with the potential for renewals if that's possible. Again, something that would have to be discussed as we get into the weeds here a little bit with the attorneys. As far as payment is concerned, there is no payment at all for the use of that facility. The exception would be, and we've described it as what's called a significant change in the Nistler building, and that's defined, meaning it's something that wasn't in the original contract documents. It didn't occur for a period of 10 years right now, but I did indicate that we may want to extend that period of time longer, so that significant change would be something that occurs outside of that time limitation. And then it would be a certain percentage of the estimated original construction cost, so it's a significant event, and I thought tying it to some dollar figure made sense. The balance of Section 3 kind of deals with maintenance and of that space and the obligations for utilities and repairs and things like that. I think that's about it. There is a force majeure clause that, again, where there's that type of an event, there may be an ability to get out from underneath certain obligations. I haven't put in a time period. I've seen some agreements with the city that it's a one-year period, but given what's going on with the COVID-19, we may want to extend that for a period of time. Again, that's something to discuss with the attorney. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Sure. Excuse me. Are there questions?
Questions regarding the agreement or anything specific, right? The next-
Just, I can only answer with respect to the agreement.
I'll have questions for that, but maybe in the next section.
That's fine.
Okay. Mr. Phelan, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think that's all that we have, and we'll stand for questions. And I know we have University of North Dakota officials here this evening too to answer
If
questions.
there's questions, we need.
Yep.
Okay. Any additional questions?
I'll move approval.
And
Do we have
Mr.
a
Veen-
motion?
Mr. Veen, I would just remind the body that we still have to open for public hearing.
Okay, okay, thank you. With that, let's open the public hearing.
I have questions.
Okay,
Okay, so a few questions. I appreciate everybody's time today, that I've already spoken with a few people regarding some of my questions, concerns, comments. You know, one of my concerns is, as we look at entering a partnership, is there any opportunity that 5 years down the road, 8 years down the road, there is a change in leadership, whether it's here at the city or at the college? And is there an opportunity for a clause in here that says if both parties mutually agree that the agreement can be terminated? So I don't know if that qualifies under section 2.5 or not, just 3.5, but just if that's an option, again, no one party would be able to force the other party, but it's, let's say that this isn't working out and a time period from now, everybody comes together and says, yeah, maybe there's dollars, maybe there's not dollars, but let's just end things. Could we do that now in this current agreement?
You can do that now. I don't know if it's necessarily required, because any parties to a contract can always come together at some point in time in the future and say, this isn't working out and we want to walk away. I do want to point out that there is a cooperation clause within the contract as well, that the parties are entering into this with the intention of trying to cooperate with one another. So to answer your question, yes, you can do that, but it not absolutely necessary that it's part of a contractual provision.
So we could enter those conversations, but it's not required to be in your language specifically stating that we need to, or would your recommendation be that if the intent is for the council to have a clause that just says, let's talk, would we need that or would we not?
I don't think it would not be my recommendation that you include a clause that we talked about terminating the contract, because the parties can always reach that agreement if it's not working out and one party wants to terminate. Remember, even if you have a clause like that in your contract, it doesn't mean that you still have to have both parties agreeing to terminate the contract. So, and I've seen provisions where you've had a termination clause that says upon mutual consent to both parties.
Is that something that would affect the donor dollars if there was just that simple one line at the end of it that said upon mutual agreement, both parties could terminate this agreement?
It would seem to me that if you terminate the agreement, any obligations under the agreement that have not been completed yet would likewise terminate unless there is an agreement to both the parties as to what specifically would be terminated and what would not be.
Okay, well, that's fair. I think that we don't need to push that if that's something that can be done. My next question, so I've reached out to the Board of Higher Ed, so I've got a great concern over the $70 million number, only because we're at 68 right now, and 68, in my opinion, sure seems like it should be enough. But that's not an argument of the case. It's, even if we went right to the governor couldn't override this and get this approved at a 68 million or whatever the price might be. So I was really concerned about having that opportunity to go back and do that, but I've explored, I've spoke with people with higher ed, and I've been assured that short of a special session, there's no way to undo it. Does that sound correct with everybody? Just want to make sure, okay. Appreciate that. So those go into my next points, which I feel a little bit of concern when you think about our commitment to the university and our commitment specifically to the College of Business. And as we look forward, a year from now, the College of Engineering has a project. And then the College of Aerospace has a project. And then the next, are we setting something that we can't reverse, that we can't undo? Are we setting the expectation that we're right at the finish line, we couldn't get there, you know what, let's do something with the city and let's figure it out. I completely agree with the workforce development concept, and in theory I think it's awesome. But are we setting ourselves up for a year from now, 2 years from now, this is something that we're going to have to deal with? And how do we say no to the next person that asks when we said yes today? You want-
Mr. Vian, may I respond to that?
City Administrator Phelan would like to respond, but if...
Go ahead, Mr. Veland.
JDA Vice President Vian and Councilmember Kwambami, that's a very good question. I think this is an opportunity, is really sprung out of, this is really the home of the Grand Forks community in this building, and it's really at that strategic intersection that's been rebuilt, where they have that scatter intersection. So this really is the home or the front door to the community. And this building is really at a strategic location. We call it the Nisser School of Business and Public Administration, but really it's the home for all programs across campus where we can convene in this location. And just because of its location, it's a new opportunity. It kind of really goes with Cooley to Columbia. And certainly there might be, we certainly invest in School of Engineering and Mines with research projects and, primarily with water, wastewater type projects, street type projects. So I think we'll do this, but I think for a physical presence, this really will be the presence for the Grand Forks community, the city of Grand Forks, the Jobs Development Authority. So I think this is one of a kind. It's a unique thing that we've never had. It really is the home to the community in this building, but across campus.
Well, and thank you. Mr. Weber, do you want to add on?
Yep. Yes, Mr. Weber, did you want to respond also?
Yeah, I think Mr. Phelan said it very well. I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kwame, did you have anything else?
I've got more, sorry. And I agree with that, and I agree that it's that it's a very important and pivotal piece for the campus. So that part I agree with. So let's say my discomfort comes from this. We've got taxpayer dollars. We're kind of, right at the finish line, and it just feels there's a lot of pressure. And what I don't want is I don't want to cause the school to delay a year, and there's inflationary costs, and we don't want to deal with that. And that's not what I'm trying to do. But again, this could happen again, and it could be a situation where we face this and we have to make the decision to say no. So let's say we say yes. So now I have two more questions. Question one is, alumni or the city or the university identifies another party that wants that space. And maybe we're not utilizing it, maybe it's a partnership, maybe it's XYZ Brick and they want to put a person right next to a city employee. Is there the opportunity to relinquish that space and relinquish the obligation to another entity should all parties agree? And I just want to know if that's something that needs a clause or if that's...
I trust that's directed at me. And I've been so rude, I'm just sitting here rather than standing up like Mr. Phelan did. I hope you don't mind if I sit, because I've got the contract right in front of me. There is, the way it's drafted presently is we've got the exclusive use of that workforce, and I trust that's what you're directing here, the office space, that 400 square foot space, with the ability of the university then to make the request to use it for their purposes. It would seem to me that you either could, at some point in time, say we're going to terminate that use, or just give them a perpetual or an expansive right to use it, would be one of the two ways that could be accomplished. We don't have a specific provision, and now that you've asked me a couple of times, we may want to add a provision about termination, and that's about mutual consent, because that can happen under any contract, whether it's in it or not. But that would be the two ways I would think could envision, in my mind anyways, to handle that situation if at some point in time the growth fund decides we're not using it effectively or what have you. And the university says we can. There are ways to deal with that, either through mutual consent by terminating that or simply continuing on with the exclusive use, but then granting them more expansive use of that space if need to be.
Sure. So potentially within that clause, if there is a clause, it would cover that as well if we modified or changed the agreement.
Correct.
So again, just trying to protect the future city. I'm not sitting here 5 years from now what does the person sitting here think, and how do we respect what they want to do?
Yeah. Chairman, do you mind if I, and the one thing we ought to be mindful of is this is a draft that, and I'm still waiting, and candidly, and I get the timing, I haven't received any comments back, and I do expect comments back to work through some of the language, and Councilmember, I think that's an appropriate thing to address is those termination issues and to raise those, to work through those now rather than later.
Absolutely. And again, no intent to terminate, but protecting us. So then the last piece is that, so again, I don't like spending taxpayer dollars if we don't have to. There's lots of things that could be used with those dollars, but I do see it as a wise investment. However, when you look at the project and you break down the project specifically, so we have a $70 million total project cost. You look at that project and we're at about $1.75 million of contingency costs. And so those contingency costs are the just in case, the whoops, we found a car buried in the ground, or somebody missed putting up tile or whatever. Those are just in case costs. There's owner and then there's the builder's contingency. So that's $1.75 million. There's also about $1.8 million worth of alternates that were accepted. So alternates, things like the skywalk, things that I think are valid, but things that will be bid separately. And you know, one of the reasons, in my opinion, you put those separately is things to add to the project that make sense, but two, that's bid independently. So let's say bids come back and that piece that's supposed to cost 800 grand now costs 1.5. You have a choice. You can use your contingency or you can choose to just not do the alternate. So in my mind, there's $1.75 million of funds that is to protect the university and make sure that the project is whole. And then there's $1.8 million worth of things that all parties have deemed necessary or prudent or the right thing to do, but still not part of the core project, still bid separately, again, to protect the university. So we're giving the university $1.3 million. So let's say at the end of the project, there's $1.3 million left over from the contingency. So in my world, that goes back to the university, and the university, in projects that I've seen before, you invest that in technology, you invest that in furniture, there's all kinds of great things to invest that in. But being that we're here and we're on the line and we're submitting the $1.3 million, is that something where there's an opportunity to have an agreement that if there's $1.3 million left and the project is still whole and the city chooses to exercise the discussion of can that money be returned? And then we can decide if we want that space, let's pay for that space, and that's great. But does that alleviate our need for the $1.3 million upfront or 10-year agreement, the commitment, and the project's still whole, the project still happens?
I can answer that question if you'd
Sure,
like.
would you please?
There is a provision about the exclusive use of these funds for the construction of the building that's been incorporated within the document itself. So I think that addresses your concern, at least partially, that there is this obligation to use it just for the construction of the building. So I suppose if they go short on their dollars and they've got they don't need to go to $700 or $70 million. Yeah, I suppose the potentiality is that some of those funds would come back to the growth fund under your factual set of circumstances. But there is an exclusivity clause about how those funds are to be utilized.
Yeah, so I guess that's a question, if that's something that can be explored. And I'd welcome any comments from the university if they choose to.
Thank you, and thank you for considering this request. Two concerns we would have about that is, one, all of our other donors, where would that play into a possible return on their investment as well, too? And for us to be equitable across the donors, and so that would be one big concern. Second concern would be about the state match of the $20 million that they're providing for our $50 million in fundraising. I believe that would be too variable of an investment that they wouldn't match that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And that's logical and that makes sense. Yeah, I think we are just at this point where the project doesn't happen unless we say yes. And I don't want to say no, but I do want to know that we've covered every possible reason of why we need to say yes for this to happen. What I don't want is to spend the money and a month from now, we think of some great idea that I'm sure Dan's going to come up with. So,
Your
under those...
expectations are pretty
Yeah,
high.
so under my, my opinion is I would approve the use of the dollars, but under the expectation that those things that I discussed would be explored fully, and that we would all agree on whatever the outcome of those explorations is.
And again, council member, you raise great points, and I think those are points that can be discussed as we finalize the agreement. Be mindful, this is a draft agreement, it's not in final format, and I'm expecting comments. And I also advise that when I sent this document, that you may be asking for additions as well. So this was to keep things moving along, so we're not necessarily locked into this. If you guys have additional comments that we want to raise during those negotiations, I'd be more than happy to take those forward.
Mr. Weber, did you have anything to add?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay.
I-
Mr.
we-
Phelan, anything? So right now, we have we need to have the public hearing. So any other comments before we open the public hearing? Okay, Mr. Mayor Vicente.
I think those are great questions posed by Councilmember Kwame. And I think like any other investment, there's no guarantee that this is going to be a return. I think in 8 years is going to be a little bit different in 50 years, and we've had the free use of a space for 40 years. And it's hard to put a value on certain things. A better partnership with UND, how can you put a number on that? I think, how do you put a number on better interns, job development, more development of professional jobs? What you can value is the economics. How many more students do we put in seats because this is built a year earlier? So yeah, I mean, you have to weigh that in, but I think it's a tough sell, but I think in 50 years, we're going to look at having gotten to use this space for 50 years and being a better partner with UND is more priceless than what we're thinking tonight, so thank you.
Smock.
Can we just run through the match again? It was a large donor, and then it was a match with the state legislature to get to that $70 million mark?
Yes, so we had our donor that named the college and when they came forward, they were interested in the state also investing in the project. So that is one objective that they had for us. So the $15 million from the lead donor, plus they had a $5 million maintenance amount. So that lead donor is at $20 million. And so that's where the state amount of $20 million also came from. So the state invested the same amount as the lead donor. So we had an additional $30 million to raise for a total of $50 million raised and $20 million from the state.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And then, so to Mr. Kamami's point, we're hitting those numbers because we need to hit that match from the
Yes.
state. So
Yes.
that's where we need to be at that 30 million total in order to hit that match.
Exactly, at 50 million total, so including the amount from the Nisslers. At 50 million total, that is when the state will provide that $20 million investment that they suggested.
Okay, so if we were to be short of that, then that's where is it that the full match wouldn't come in, or?
No, it wouldn't, the project would not go forward.
The project would not go forward, okay.
And so we have a certain amount of time to find that amount to match and to allow the project to go forward.
Okay. And then can we just review again the benefit to the city? So these are JDA funds, correct? So this is our jobs development funds. Can we just go through again what the city kind of sees as a benefit?
Absolutely. Okay.
I'll answer on behalf of the city of Grand Forks and the Jobs Development Authority. What we've always wanted with the University of North Dakota, I think number one, we want a competitive UND School of Business and Public Administration that's going to drive enrollment. And each student is going to pay for themselves as we grow enrollment. Not only grow enrollment over 4 years, we get new students that come every year, which provides new life, new energy, new engagement over time, and it provides a workforce for us. Is not only do we get them to Grand Forks, it's almost like the Grand Forks Air Force Base. They came to Grand Forks because of the University of North Dakota, because we have a a premier school of business public administration. We keep them in our community. We grow them as part of our workforce, not only during their 4 to 6 years. We maintain that investment in our community. And we know workforce is our number one issue. We used to say that pre-pandemic. I think we're going to say that post-pandemic. It's just going to be different. It's going to be about going to the new economy, and a school of business public administration is going to be at the heart of what the new economy is. And so we're going to have this premier school here that is going to keep really premier talent here in Grand Forks, and talent attraction and retention is a huge thing for Grand Forks. It's a huge town. It's a huge issue for any town USA, and we're fortunate to have the University of North Dakota, which is bringing students here. Otherwise, they may not come here. So it's really workforce driven. How are we going to staff this space? We're going to have human resource professionals in the space. We're going to have economic development, community development. We're going to have a variety of city personnel that are going to be in this space. We may have some of our partnering organizations in this space, whether that's the Economic Development Corporation or others. So it's not only going to be for us, but it's for the broader community that we serve moving forward. It's going to be about, attracting students. It's going to be a hub for research. It's a hub for all things going across campus. We've talked about having a liaison position that would be housed out of this particular office too. But it's going to have a variety of, we want to be flexible, we want to be adaptable, and this is really our home on campus when we do all the sorts of things that we do to partner with the University of North Dakota. So it's really a huge opportunity for us to drive, put the face on campus of the city of Grand Forks, the community, and really moves us forward as part of workforce development. And I think it's going to be even more and more important. So that's why the Jobs Development Authority, it's in the name jobs, it is not only during their 4 years, but we can retain some of these students and be a more competitive community and hopefully grow business, grow lots of things in our community.
Go ahead.
And in terms of funding and the stability of the budget, I think that is important. This isn't general funds. I assume with new leadership, are we good in those funds? Are we concerned about this 1.3 million coming out of that fund, or do we feel like we have that now and can securely fund this going forward?
JDA Vice President Vian and Councilmember Mock, we do. I think later you're going to see the Jobs Development Authority. I think you're going to see with the Corporate Center 1 and 2 sale, either later this year or into next year, with the sale of Cirrus and other things, we're probably looking at $14 to $15 million in the Jobs Development Authority fund. So we certainly can take this over 10 years, and I think it's really going to pay for itself over that. I think really this investment too is really important because the grant over 10 years, as I think Mayor Bachensky said, in the next 40 years plus, hopefully, really we have a space that we're not paying into. And so that's not going to happen very often with the city of Grand Forks.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to just make just a very, very quick comment. I think this concept is creative, it's forward-thinking, and it's an excellent investment for the city for a number of reasons, for what Mayor Boshinsky and Mr. Phelan have stated, and the fact that it keeps this project going is just an added benefit for what we're trying to do. So I really do support this, and I think thinking outside the box to do something like this is probably what other universities may try to do in the future too, but it's just an excellent example about how we work together and make this into a win-win for all of us. So, any more comments before I open the public hearing? Seeing no comments, I will open the public hearing. Does anybody from the public like to respond or have any discussion on this? Ms. Sorsett, have we seen or heard anything?
I have not received any.
Okay, I will close the public hearing then and look for a motion.
I'm pending the discussion of those 3 or 4 items. I move approval.
Mr. Got a motion from Mr. Kwame. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Weigel. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries unanimously. Item 3, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move approval.
Move
to adjourn.
Motion and a second then? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Call to order. Grand Forks City Council meeting, July 20th, 2020. Welcome, everybody. Roll call, please, Maureen.
Michael?
Here.
Dockler? Ms. Dockler?
Here.
Thank you. Weber?
Here.
Mock?
Here.
Kavami?
Here.
Sandy?
Here.
And Veen? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you.
And 1.2 is mayor's announcements.
I'd like to take a moment. I think we're all mourning the loss of UND Provost Tim DiLorenzo. It's just a senseless violence, and it's. I think it takes everybody by surprise and makes you sort of rethink kissing your kids one more time before you leave the house in the morning. So. Just give that a moment. This week we had a busy week again. Some tours and briefings at local organizations and institutions. Visited the Air Force Base, the EERC, and the Housing Authority. So I want to thank Colonel Pringle, President Armacost, and Charles Gorecki at the EERC. We were there right before the storms hit on Friday, so that was an interesting time. And then Mr. Terry Hansen and Senate Kirk Cruin at the Housing Authority. I did some police department briefings, so I was able to go to every shift, which was really interesting and eye-opening. Everybody's favorite topic when it's going well, mosquito control. So we had a good couple days of mosquito control where we didn't end up having to do the aerial spraying. So I think that turned out good. We'll see in the future if we end up doing that, but we were able to take care of it with the smaller vehicles. So thank you to Todd Hansen and the crews for that. We turned on the valve at the new water treatment plant. So the plant is officially putting water into the distribution system now. I had the pleasure of taking the first glass, and I haven't turned green yet, so I'm imagining that it is good. We're going to have a formal celebration to open that up in September, but I want to take a second to recognize Councilmember Ken Veen and City Administrator Todd Phelan. I think they did a great job over the many, many years to make that happen. And a ton of work behind the scenes. I know Ken did a lot of work getting that funded at a state level. Couldn't be any happier. Ken, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about it, but I give you a chance now.
Well, I would maybe make a couple comments. I think although it was a long process and a lot of work was done at the legislature, the biggest portion of the work was done by Mr. Phelan and city staff and all the planning and working with the engineers and contractors for all these years. As you've seen, it's a very impressive plant. In fact, it may be one of the most sophisticated plants in the whole country with the dual treatment process that's going on, and gives us complete flexibility. And I think the true winners in all this is the citizens of Grand Forks, who have now a good, reliable water plant, something they really haven't had for years to come. So I just think there's a lot of thanks to go around to everybody, and I appreciate what everybody has done for this. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Todd. I want to do an update on COVID here. We've had a little bit of an uptick here, and I think it's important to address. Today, Grand Forks added 24 additional positive cases, bringing the total cases up to 533 with 434 recovered. We've had 4 deaths and 95 currently active. Residents and businesses must take personal accountability and be formed and take actions based on common sense and wise judgment that will protect health and support our economy and workforce. I'm emphasizing and encouraging individual responsibility, not only on the basis of personal safety, but for the sake of others, while asking our community to also act with empathy and compassion for others' decisions and actions. The most powerful weapon currently against this virus is still physical distancing. When physical distancing cannot be maintained, wear a mask. Let's be respectful of others' space, masked or otherwise, and also be respectful of businesses' safety guidelines, whether this is directional signage or mandatory masks. Face masks lead to less asymptomatic viral spread and hopefully less burden on our hospital system. So continue to practice safe, protective hygiene and cleaning. Stay home when sick. Wash hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds as frequently as feasible. Use hand sanitizer. Cough or sneeze into your elbows, not hands. The vampire cough. Clean high-touch surfaces regularly. Avoid touching your face and refrain from handshaking. Continue to protect high-risk and vulnerable population. If we can go back to that chart. As you can see, cases are on the rise. 1 positive. We do only have 2 current hospitalizations. Let's move on here to the testing event. Deb Swanson and our public health team did an amazing job out there at the National Guard, testing almost 1,600 people. I think at this time I'll give some questions. If anybody has any questions for Ms. Swanson about that or about COVID in general, she's going to take a few minutes. So.
Thank you, Mayor Bochensky, especially for all those wonderful public health messages. Council members, I'm here. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I think the overview was fairly current. I do have one correction to the slide. It was the 15th of July. That was my mistake. I think I sent the 16th on that slide, but it was on the 15th, and then we will be having another event on Wednesday with this UND. That will be held at UND at the High Performance Center. We also assisted them with one this past Friday. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Swanson, anything you can attribute to this? I mean, our numbers have been tracking really well. I've been following them for months, and until these last 2 days, that trend is kind of alarming. So, is there anything you could contribute it to that you could think of that? And if it is, do you see this as short-term or more long-term?
Mayor Bochensky, members of the council, Mr. Vian, there are a number of factors that I think have contributed to it. I think largely it's that publicly, I think people think that COVID was over in June because we did have low numbers. And so I think there was a lot of complacency about all of the precautions that were just mentioned that are still really important to keep in place. The cases that we're seeing are community spread and close contacts. Unfortunately, close contacts now range in the area of 10 to 20 instead of 3 to 5, which we initially saw. So a larger number of contacts drives testing, and that drives the numbers. So we also know that we've seen a lot more workplace impact. So once people have a positive case in a workplace, whether it's an agency, a governmental unit, a business, our own withdrawal management center was affected over the weekend. What ends up happening is you have to quarantine a large number of individuals then who are close contacts if they haven't been wearing masks or social distancing. We are also seeing a number of social interactions with activities, places where people are gathering, whether it's in homes or restaurants or bars or events, and then we see clusters. So we've seen a few clusters. We're also seeing a large number of additional cases in the age group of 20 to 29. Whereas before we were seeing it initially in the 30 to 39 age group, now we're seeing it in a lower age group. Sadly, Minnesota had their first pediatric death today in Clay County. That's not very far from here. It was a 9-month-old infant. So this isn't just a disease that affects the elderly, it affects other vulnerable groups too.
Are you able to do the tracing that you need to if you're talking about so many in the numbers?
Mayor Bochensky, members of the council, Mr. Vian, the last 2 weekends have been really challenging. A lot of the testing occurs from Monday through Thursday, And so those cases began to show up in our office or the State Health Department on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so that's when we have our big push to do contact tracing. It's a responsibility of the North Dakota Department of Health, but we have assisted them with adding additional staff. So our additional staff worked all weekend to do all the contact tracing that was necessary for these additional cases. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, we had a total of 71. I do not know how many contacts, but it was a large number.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. Is there any further questions, Jean? Vice President Jean?
So nationally, it seems like there's kind of a delay in getting results back from tests. Are we seeing that delay on our tests as well?
Mayor Bochensky, members of the council, Ms. Mock, we are seeing that, and I think it's because there's been a lot more testing and a lot more emphasis on testing both the vulnerable populations, and they need to be tested repeatedly like long-term care, but now we're adding all these large testing events in, and static testing and contacts. So we've really put a lot of pressure on the state lab, and I think that that is starting to cause delays because they batch them and they run them, and we don't always know exactly what day they're going to be run. But we are seeing a delay. I have several email messages tonight from people who are still waiting for results. The state has been implementing a number of technological things that I think will help us, where people can register online and then they will get a text message or an email message with their results. Obviously, if they're positive, they'll get a phone call first. We think that that's working a little bit, and it's much better than having to make phone calls, but it still takes some time for people to get notified. So we occasionally have to look up results for individuals.
And do we, if you get tested and then you're waiting, do we ask those people to quarantine until they find out the results, if at all possible?
Technically, people should quarantine while they are waiting for results, but we know that in surveillance testing, which is just attempting to find out the prevalence among our population, oftentimes we haven't recommended a quarantine.
Sure.
We did have a 3% positivity rate, which, resulted in 49 people testing positive, so it's not a huge number. The delay in results and the delay in getting people into isolation when they're positive, though, does impact our ability to contain the disease. So we absolutely would love to tighten that up. Yes, indeed.
I can speak to that for just a moment, too. We've been working with our institutional partners to try to decentralize the testing so that we can get a certain number of tests done basically within a day. So that'll slow down the tracing so the tree doesn't branch off as far. We're still in discussions of how best to handle that. There's a machine called the Panther, which is, Ultra currently has one. I know, I don't make these names up. Ultra currently has one. There's only a certain amount of capacity. UND is waiting for another one, but getting the test kits and the reactants has been the holdup. So even though we may get one, we may not get the right amount of testing kits and reactants, so it may be useless even. But we are working hard to try to shorten that time up and decentralize it so there can be a quicker turnover.
And do all of our tests have to go to the state lab for results? Is that?
Currently, all of our testing that we are involved in with the National Guard and our partners does. Altru has a very, very limited number of rapid tests that they can do, but that varies based on testing kit availability and therefore high priority.
And I guess to the point of the test availability and the results, are we able to get those with the school looking to reopen? Are we planning any sort of testing for teachers or students as they return?
We're in discussions right now about possibly doing pool testing. So you take a certain number, and if you have a hit, then you would test the whole class. So finding the best way to use resources. We have a group that's working on that right now, putting together not only what are our resources, but what are our needs, and finding a good place to meet, because we'd love to test everybody every day, but we're not going to have those resources. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, please, Mr. Weber.
Ms. Swanson, the testing event next week on Wednesday, I think it's noteworthy that that's a walk-up event, so people who use the bus or have other transportation challenges will be able to access that more easily. Is that part of the intention?
Mr. Weber, if I understood your question correctly, you were asking about the testing event this Wednesday, which is a walk-in event?
It's this Wednesday, 2 days from now.
Right. It's my understanding that that is a university-focused event, and that's why they do walk-in testing, is so that it accommodates students and those on campus. And you can easily park there and walk over to there. We assisted with one last Friday, and it went very smoothly. And so, yes, you would not need a car to participate in that event.
Very good, thanks.
Mr. Weber, does this have anything to do with your affinity to ride a bike?
I have a concern for people who have different transportation challenges.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's all for questions. So Ms. Swanson to step down. That's all for mayor's announcements.
All right, we'll move on to awards, presentations, appointments, proclamations. 2.1 is CAT grand opening.
Mr. Bergen, please.
Mayor Buczynski and members of the council, just want to make a personal invite to you to the ribbon cutting ceremony at 11 a.m. This Thursday, July 23rd. And then our building will be open to the public from 1 to 3 so they can take a look. It has totally changed it from a barn to a building that is worthwhile coming to work for. And it has improved the outlook of the whole building. So just wanted to make a personal invite for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and 2.2 is the mayor's fiscal year 2021 budget presentation. And Mayor, I'll bring the, oh, you already have it up here. You want to start?
And then I will say quickly, I know we have some people that are waiting for public comments, so instead of waiting until 6.1, I'm going to go first, and I'll let Maureen go, and then we'll invite the public comments. They can come up, so I don't have to wait any longer. Do we have the slides?
Yeah, I'm just gonna, Cheryl, do we have the slides? All right, there you go.
Thank you. So we'll go over these items here. You don't need me to read them off to you. Moving on. Slide 4. So this is the total city budget. If you look at 2019 to 2020, you had the water treatment plant that was in part of that, so that's the big decrease there. The 11 million that you see from 2020 to 2021 had about 3.9 million in operational cuts, and the rest came from capital improvement projects. I think that shows a great job done by the engineering and planning team and Marine to find a way to make that happen. Next slide. We're going to go over the employees, the essential, public safety, public works, in that order. We decided to keep all pay grades at their current ranges. We're hoping that we'll be able to resurvey the benchmarks next year. We opted to do a $1,000 increase across the board for each employee. We had really unreliable data, market data, to be able to try to set salary ranges and such there. I personally, along with Maureen and Todd, went out to all the department heads and spoke with them to see where morale was at. And most of the departments, I can pretty well say they were happy there wasn't cuts there, and to get any raise at all, they were certainly happy with that. And it's also keeping employees ahead of the health insurance costs, which seem to be rising more and more every year. For now, we're going to hold off on the ND PERS public safety plan. And there you can see the increase from the health insurance premium. We did have some promotions and restructures. We discussed these at the last meeting at Public Works. We had a promotion, waste, fire, public health, inspections, humans, and the mayor's office and public info. If you want to move on. The general fund. Expenses were down 2.07%. You can see that, I think, on a slide coming up. But we had some negatives. Definitely revenues are down. They're down from sales tax and state aid, and that state aid is usually coming from the taxes on oil. So oil's been in the tank, so it's been tough. We've had to kind of bite the bullet there, and we haven't received a lot of that state aid. But there is some positives. We've managed to completely fund the dike bonds, so they'll be satisfied in 2021. So we could take the money going from there and put a majority of that into the general fund. We also had a decrease in the library and public transit. So in all, we ended up with a 0.78 reduction in mills. And if you look at the value of a mill, it's increased 2.09. 1.49% of that is from growth, so that's new growth. And construction, 0.06 is from revaluation. So the average person is going to see that 0.6% increase, but they're going to see a mill decrease of 0.78. So the average person is going to see a decrease in their taxes from the city's portion. So we're pretty excited about that because there's a lot of other financial burdens with the virus right now. Moving on. This shows the priority here. Public safety, infrastructure, and public health is taking up 78% of the general fund expenses. That's very important to me, and I'm glad we were able to fund those properly. Taking a quicker, tighter look here, public safety itself is 55% of the general budget. We didn't cut any positions at all in that. About the only cuts that we made there was on some travel, just because travel wasn't going to be able to really take place to a lot of the training and the conferences due to the virus. Move on. A couple of the highlights, we were able to fully fund the CVIC. We were happy to do that. We met with them. They got a very good presentation of what they offer to the city. School detox, we increased that. School resource officers, we still have our 5 SROs. The internship program, we use a cost share with UND, and mental health, $20K still going towards the police department for that in a time when it's very needed. Sanitation, no increases. Wastewater, saw a 2 to 3% rate increase. Wastewater, no increases in stormwater with a slight increase as well. So generally that billing held pretty flat. Your monthly, you won't see a whole lot of increase there. Move on to slide 14. Public transit was really excited to get that $3.37 million in CARES funding. That gave us a real opportunity to use that money well. The Alaris Center, that's obviously a tough environment. Glad to see Anna in attendance tonight. Spectra and Anna's team is doing the best that they can under these circumstances, but until events are able to continue as they have been in the past and safely, it's going to continue to be a journey, but they're on it. I'm sure Daniel will have some comments on that later. Continue on. Jobs Development Authority, as Todd mentioned earlier, we're pretty excited. There's going to be a lot of opportunities there and money available for economic growth. As we look, I think the Cirrus building sale for sure will take place in the spring. They're getting a pretty good contractual deal there. We're hoping to finalize Corporate Center 1 and 2 and make sure we've got the buyers there. So we're hoping this fall or in the spring we'll be able to finally move out of those buildings, which we've held for a little over 20 years now. The Grand Forks, I don't think we need to talk about the Nistler School. We got that. We've all seen that. The Herald Building. So we've decided that we're no longer moving any of the city offices over there. We took the mayor's office and the administration office on the main floor, which is about 2,100 square feet, and we compressed ourselves down to about 750, which made room for community development to move, community development and planning to move on the main floor, so they didn't need to move over to the Herald Building, and we can continue to develop that and use it as a resource economically and financially. We're still working on that radio project. Prairie Dog funding is questionable right now. We're not planning on getting that, so we're going to try to find a way to fund that one way or another. I'd like to thank the Altru Health System for continuing their funding on that front. I know they're going through a difficult financial time, and they're still committed to this program, so appreciate that. Library is all done now. I was there about 3 weeks ago. There looks like their opening is going to be delayed a little bit longer, but we're excited to see that. And we also got some police grants through that CARES funding. Human Needs, this is kind of a new fund that was just developed. We've added 15,000 more for that. Beautification, with the mortgages being satisfied for the corporate centers, there was some money that was sent over to beautification. So now at 1.5 million, I think we're sitting in a pretty healthy balance there. We're going to draw on that balance, but for at least the near-term future, we're going to delay any more allocations to that fund. Otherwise, 2020, we kept our 310 going to EDC. We've added 5,000 going to the airbase. We've got 250 for contingency for the Alaris Center. We've got our brick. Special events and arts regranting had a little bump. I think they were at 125, but they're bumped up based on inflation numbers. And we're fully funding special events and arts regranting as we had in the past. And this is the last slide for me, economic development. We have an exciting program coming up with, we're working with the Housing Authority and the Grand Forks Land Trust to try to offer some down payment closing cost assistance. We're pretty excited that more to come on that, but it's going to be a great program. I think it'll be great for the North End. It's going to put more families into houses and hopefully fill up those schools and help save some of those schools. So I'm really excited about that program. And strategically, we're using our funds. These are all generally matched funds that are grants from other entities. So we're excited about that. And yeah, that's all for me. Go ahead, Maureen.
Thank you, Mayor. I will take it from here, and I know the mayor's going to open up for public comment at the end as well. You all did receive a detailed budget binder later today, so as you go through that, or maybe if you have some trouble sleeping, you can look at all 400 plus pages of that. But I'm here for questions as you review that, but I'll try to not use all your time up tonight, but just try to hit the highlights and give you a sense of what's included in that budget document. What I would point to for the encompassing information that's in detail to follow is look at your budget summary section in that binder, and that will pull all that information together for you. But I do want to thank the mayor for starting out the presentation. This budget document is so important as it lays the groundwork for the year ahead and years ahead. It's a planning and management tool, helps us gain a long-term perspective, and we follow our policies and accountable for them, and we demonstrate to our citizens and stakeholders that the city is committed to strong fiscal operations, and we're being mindful of the cost to Grand Forks residents. So we're very proud of that and our budgetary practices. What this slide just shows then is the 2021 budget, total revenues by type, the largest category being enterprise funds. If we were to show this graphic by type of revenue collected across all funds, for instance, property tax would account for 15%, and charges for services makes up the largest piece of the pie of 38%. Next, we just show the total budget by expense across funds. The mayor touched on this with his presentation. The total expenses across all funds is roughly $178 million. Much of this discussion throughout the year is general fund, but as you can see, general fund makes up 23% of the pie, with the largest percentage being the enterprise funds. That category of enterprise funds is made up of where you'll see your four major utility funds: water, wastewater, sanitation, storm sewer, and is also made up of Mosquito, JDA, Parking, Alaris Center. But as we get into general fund, we first of all just did overall summary slide for you, and then we're going to get into the highlights. You have information in your binder that breaks these numbers down by category. In total, we've budgeted total expense of roughly $40.6 million for the general fund. This is a 2.07% decrease as compared to the 2020 budget. We estimate revenue at $40.2 million, which is at $40.2 million, and we use a share of department carryover as to not impact property taxes. We also bring in, as planned, a remainder of the operational impact reserve that was set aside for that addition of the fire station number 5, as that had an operational impact to the general fund. Cuts in total expenses, not easy. Looked as some of these to be a temporary adjustment for some, as we are holding on much capital. When we get into the 6-year projection, we work on restoring that capital to appropriate levels and build that back up as we grow the economy back. Much more should be known, hopefully, in 2021 than is known today regarding the future impacts on our revenue streams due to COVID. Other areas of reduction that we included in here were some staffing changes that were referred to last week and tonight by Mayor Boczynski. We've also lowered some travel and education related items by half, looked at reducing other areas of operations as well. We work with departments to ensure that all critical training isn't compromised. We want to make sure all are well-trained with our staff levels, but we look to some opportunities to do some of that training by remote means. We certainly know that training employees to be their best is important, so we want to make sure we build some of that back in. The general fund in total, this pie chart will just show you where the money comes from. As you can see, the most significant revenue source being property tax, charges for services, and sales tax. The graph, I just wanted to point out that this graphic has shifted a bit over the past few years, as you're going to see an upcoming slide with some history on state aid. In regards to state aid, for example, used to account for approximately 12% of the piece of the pie of revenue for general fund, compared to now we're showing only 6% in 2021. At same budget year, sales tax accounted for 14% as compared to 10% estimated in 2021. Really what people want to know is how the money's being spent. The mayor did touch on this a bit earlier, but just wanted as a reminder to show you that the expense for general fund is roughly 40.6 million. Most of this going for public safety, and you can see the other categories there as well. When looking at streets, engineering, health, public safety, all combined, it's 78% of your general fund. So as you can see here, just another way of breaking down those expenses. The general fund is very people-driven, with 80% of the budget for the wages and benefits category, 17% maintenance and operations, and we're holding on much capital, so that piece of the pie is smaller in 2021, but in the 6-year projection, we build that back up to appropriate levels. Wanted to show you this, as later on we'll just show you with non-general fund categories, how that comes out, and you're going to see a much different picture. We continue to monitor sales tax. We currently, about the same as, we did just receive notice that I wanted to point out, collections for July that we will receive yet this week. The numbers were quite a surprise, as they did come in very well in July, which would reflect sales from the month of May. Last week you saw me revise the projection estimate for 2020 of about a 15% impact. I'm going to relook at that. I'm looking closer to maybe a 12% impact for 2020. For now, I'm keeping the projections as is for 2021. Going into this, hopefully, as a conservative number, but I'd rather go in conservative. And then if things come in better, we can do a budget amendment and bring some of that capital back in there. But for now, our estimate in the 2021 estimated sales tax budget is 4.23 million, and you can see how that 1% general sales tax is allocated, and no changes are recommended there. Little history, as I alluded to on state aid, just a quick review as the history of those collections. We saw an increase in those collections. It peaked in about 2014 at about 4.9 million. Our general fund saw a decline to the low of about 3 million in 2017, and then we seem to have weathered that storm, and we were seeing a rebound with those collections. But now, once again, we're seeing that revenue stream being impacted due to COVID, and we're budgeting 2.6 million in 2021. But this graphic will just give you a good visual of those collections over time. This, we did just receive July collections for the second quarter, and those were down about 14 to 15% as compared to the second quarter of 2019. As a review, we do charge for services to other funds for the services the general fund departments provide. Examples of this are human resources, get reimbursed, for instance, for the services they provide for items such as employee training, hiring processes. Other departments get reimbursed, such as finance, info center, city attorney. Mayor already touched on the breakout here of public safety, streets, engineering, but just a reminder there that that accounts for 78% of the budget of the general fund. Also wanted just to highlight the funding of streets and how that all ties together. The general fund pays for the daily operations of your street department, which includes staffing, street sweeping, pothole repair, etc. We also have that latest 0.5% sales tax, which helps to fund our street department through street maintenance, materials and equipment. And then finally, the street infrastructure fund pays for your larger capital maintenance, road projects, and approximately 25% of the streets department. Primary source of funding for the street infrastructure fund is sales tax and gas tax. The city has a general fund balance policy of 18% minimum unassigned fund balance that we often refer to. If we were to drop below our 18%, we need to bring that back up within a 3-year period. We currently sit at 21% of our 2021 budgeted expenditures. With so many unknowns, we recommend maintaining this balance, and this budget includes a plan that does not project to spend down this balance. I do, as I stated, believe the budget to be conservative, but we do have this balance if we need to draw upon in 2021. Really, we need to consider not just the annual budget, but look to the future and impacts. And so we try to give you a 6-year outlook of the projection of the general fund and based on certain assumptions. The projection assumes the value of a mill increases over this time between 1.52 and 3.54%. It does make the assumption that the mills stay level over that time period. Expenses, we do need to be very tight as we're projecting just 2% increase per year in salaries here. And we also slowly build up assumptions for sales tax and state aid revenue. No additional FTEs are included in the projection at this time, and the projection does slowly bring back capital to appropriate levels of funding. Included within the revenue assumption is transfers from our loan and stabilization fund over this 6-year projection. We also show use of some carryover dollars that come in to help this cash flow. So as we dive into all funds excluding general fund, this graphic will help you see how the expenses break out. So earlier we looked at a similar pie chart for the general fund, which was 80% wages and benefits. When we look at all non-general fund breakdown, your largest category is your capital outlay, with wages and benefits being 16%. So just wanted to show you the difference in those different fund types. The mayor went through much of this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but we do have loan and stabilization funds of $550,000 transfer built in to the 21 budget for general fund stabilization of taxes purposes. Our public safety answering point was also briefly touched on in the 911, which is what your charge on your phone lines pays for. The 911 fund pays a portion of PSAT operations and also covers your infrastructure costs there. The general fund with the public safety answering point, our current percent that the general fund of the city pays in for that is 59.85% based on call volume, and that's about $851,000. The library board is asking for mills to decrease slightly. So the mayor covered this, decrease of 0.18 mills, basically holds the dollar amount equivalent from previous year. They've budgeted $103,000 for building upgrades from existing dollars, continue to set aside and not use the bequest of Mr. Neal, which has a balance of about $687,000. And then the city's special assessment fund, no change there as far as mills. That's to pay special assessments for city-owned property. Our insurance reserve fund is used to pay insurance premiums for general liability, public officials, air and emissions, auto marine coverage for the city. No change there. Fund 2175 was set up for the street water sales tax. Proceeds are recorded in this fund and then distributed to the areas that you see on the slide. And finally, 2020 was the first year that we set up and included a fund called Prairie Dog Infrastructure Fund. We are anticipating collections from this effort. We haven't seen any funds come in at this time. You'll see a handout in the front pocket of your binder that has a projection of prairie dog funds. Originally, we were anticipating the first $2.5 million in collections, fourth quarter of 2020. We've shifted that out 2 years in hopes that we can see those collections in the future. I think it was Ms. Mock that asked about our city-owned buildings. Here's a 6-year outlook at the Public Building Fund. In summary, this can be found in your budget binder. We tried to refer to the pages in your budget binder for easy reference. So page numbers are included on these slides to see more detail. But here's a cash flow of how that fund has a 6-year outlook, and 3.85 mils goes here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just a very, just a graphic for you, if you may, with the capital improvement plan and all the different funding sources that go into our CIP. And then this slide will just break down that CIP and where the dollars get allocated between equipment replacement, streets, bike paths, facilities, and buildings into your utility infrastructure. Largest portion going towards streets and bike paths. And then with that street infrastructure fund, you can see a cash flow over the 6-year time period. Details of the projects that are included in here are found on the page numbers referred to on this slide that are in your binder. I would just point out that you can see in the year 2023, when those revenues go up significantly, that's when we start to see significant prairie dog funds projected that would come into this fund for street capital projects. And this will just give you by color, by year, the roads that will get touched in this period of time. This is maybe more detail for engineering to answer questions for, but I just wanted to give you a picture of how that looks. Fund 4154 is for large capital projects for the flood protection system. Projects in detail in your binder, of course, but included in 2021, projects involving pump station control, drive replacement, outfall pipe rehab, riprap, erosion repair, painting, levee excavation, settlement repairs. The funding source for this fund are for the special assessments. As property gets annexed into the city, everybody pays their flood specials. This is where that those revenues go to help fund the capital projects maintenance of the flood protection system going forward. As well as there is a use tax that currently goes to pay for a bond that is paid for out of our Street Capital Infrastructure Fund, Fund 4815. You can see on this chart in the year 2022, you'll see the revenues into this fund jump from 300 to 900,000. Well, that's because that bond will be paid off, and now the infrastructure or the use tax will go directly into this fund for the purpose of capital maintenance. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all these enterprise funds. The mayor went through the highlights with you earlier on his slides, but just want to maybe give you a snapshot of each of these utility funds. As you can see, the beginning operating cash, what the revenue expenses are, and then finally the end of year cash. In your sanitation fund, we're not projecting any rate increases here. We have legally restricted debt service funds of about 1.4 million and an operating cash reserve of about 4.7. In your wastewater fund, same thing. You can see the revenue and expense. We do have some small rate increases in the wastewater fund, 2% for residential, 3% for the commercial. Debt service, legally restricted cash balance here is 3 million, and construction operating reserve cash of 1.1. Just included this slide as it's important to note that the wastewater utility is incredibly important enterprise for industry with wastewater treatment plant and infrastructure to support industries in our area. As we do an analysis of rates and from residential and commercial to industry, you can see on this chart how that breaks down. The East Grand Forks share, as you can see, is approximately $406,000. A joint meeting will be set up between East Grand Forks and Grand Forks soon to discuss those rates. Water is estimated to have a cash balance of $4.5 million. You can see the revenue and expenses there. No rate increases in this fund. We do have construction reserve cash of $5.4 million in our water fund and a debt service legally restricted balance of cash of $3.2 roughly. The last of the four major utility funds is our stormwater utility. Revenue matching expenses there with a slight increase in rates, 3.5% for the stormwater fee and 2% for the flood protection Greenway maintenance fee. We do have about $700,000 in our construction reserve cash there, and details can be found in your binder. And then our mosquito fund, no rate increases here as well, with revenues and expenses pretty equivalent, with a capital cash reserve balance of $125,000. All in all then, this will just give you a comparison utility bill 2020 compared to 2021. We've tried to keep rates down as well as property tax as much as possible, knowing economic concerns of those in our community. What we look at with our utility funds is roughly on a 6,000 gallon average residential user an 81 cents per month, or 0.84% increase. And this slide just sums up our public transit. Once again, the mayor hit the highlights with our public transit fund, but this, you can just see revenue expense cash balance there with 80% federal share, 20% city share here. And Dial-A-Ride, our projected revenue and expense listed with our cash balances. Details can be found in your binder. If you remember, in 2020, we did take on some service in-house, and that has proven to show savings. It's the mission of the Alaris Center to provide premier entertainment and events that stimulate economic impact and improve quality of life for Grand Forks area citizens. Spectra and their team has been working hard to accomplish that mission. Mayor Boczynski already highlighted the Alaris Center earlier, but it has been a challenging year for the Alaris Center, as it's one of the hardest hit industries due to COVID. 2020 was off to a great year, record-breaking start, and then we have had challenges of COVID. 2021 budget is seen as a rebuilding year. People want to get back to attending large events, but we have to do it in a smart way, and much is out of our control. Spectra is working hard to get through this time period and excited to grow going forward. We do have capital budgeted of $2.6 million, with $1 million going toward future capital reserve. We want to put away as much as possible for the future without compromising current capital needs and operations. We'll continue to work toward this and update projections as we see sales tax estimates and impacts. Details of the Alaris Center budget can be once again found in your binder. But their budget was built on the event load that is listed with, I'm not going to read this off for you, but you can see what goes into their numbers there. And then our JDR, our Job Development Authority, the mayor also reviewed the highlights of this fund, but this will just give you a one-page snapshot of the cash, revenue, expense, and then details of this can be found in your budget binder. Summary of municipal parking. This fund will show a cash balance of about $24,000, construction reserve about $312,000 that we've been purposely setting aside into a reserve. There is a CSO position paid, budgeted out of here for the purpose of security and parking enforcement. That was also included in the 2020 budget. Hasn't been filled yet, as we had made a decision to hold due to COVID impacts, but we'll plan to move forward in 2021. The next few slides will just give you some data to help understand mills and how it equates to the taxpayer in dollars. So you'll see on a $100,000 value home, on the 97.9 mills that we have proposed levying for 2021, it would come to $440 roughly annually. Median assessed value of a home in 2020 is about $197,000, $198,000, which would equate to about $871 or $72 a month. And you can see the services that the city provides for that. And then just a quick chart that just sort of shows the value since 2015-16 of the mill, and then the total mills levied. Try to, as you know, offset with mill decreases or holding flat to offset some of those increases in value. And this graphic is just meant to show you that. From 20 to 21, of course, we have that 0.78 mill reduction. Just as a summary to wrap things up, the mayor recommends this budget document as a whole to continue monitoring COVID-19 impacts. Like I said earlier, I do believe the numbers to be conservative on the revenue side. We can amend 2021 budget if things are looking better than we have projected, but we don't want to catch ourselves in the other situation. So we have brought forward, I believe, a conservative budget on the revenues. If things come in better, we can amend the budget and bring some capital back in here. The mill levy does show a minor decrease in total for 2021, which equates to a property tax decrease on the average. Utility rate increases based on a 6,000 gallon month user comes to about 81 cents a month increase, or 0.84%. And once again, the mayor has moved forward with a $1,000 increase in salaries across the board for each employee, and due to that salary data being pre-COVID data. And of course, it's a balanced budget with a 6-year outlook. We look to analyze this annually. We want to maintain adequate cash balances in all our funds. We continue to use the fire reserve to offset those increased operational costs. 2021 is the final year of bringing in those reserve dollars. And then finally, in total, the budget is $178 million. That compares to $189 million a year ago. And like the mayor stated, a lot of that is due to capital projects. Even when you look at the total operational budget, though, we do see a savings there. And then finally, the 2021 budget and 6-year projection, really based on the mayor's focus of employees, essential public safety, public works, public health services, and economic growth and expansion as we want the city to grow. Before we open it up to questions, just want to thank all the departments, finance staff, mayor, council, citizens through this process. It has been quite a process this year, as much data has been changing as we have gone, and we've done a lot of revisions as we've gone, and I think we've put together a sound budget that you can work with and be proud of, and we'll be open to your questions. Some steps that are just important dates that are coming up. August 3rd, we do look at preliminary approval. Once that date has passed, you can decrease, but you cannot increase the budget after that point. We do need to notify the county by August 10th so they can send out their estimated tax statements to all households by the 31st of August. And then September 14th, we look to have final approval and a public hearing in city council chambers at 5:30. And just one final note, we do have an engagement feedback portion on our city website that you can refer to, and we'll get updated information out there for the public. And with that, I would open up for questions and to Mayor Boczynski.
Thank you, Marina. If council doesn't mind holding off for just a second, I know we have some people that have been waiting really patiently. So I'm going to open up their citizen comments here in a moment. We did have a number of emails as well regarding the community coordinator position. We're going to attach all of those to agenda item 6.1, so we'll already have done that. So at this time, I got some speaker cards. I'm going to go through those first, and then if anybody else wants to come up after, we'll make it available. We're going to keep it to 3 minutes a person. If it ends up being really duplicative and we keep going through there, we might just have you come up, say your name and something real briefly. But let's start with Miss Raquel Smith.
Hi, I'd like to speak on Robin David and the welcoming committee that we need to reinstate. Unlike some people here in Grand Forks, I've lived here since I was in first grade. Grand Forks is not just where I live, it's my hometown. My parents ran a charitable organization here in town called Mission Socorro for their entire life, where their entire mission was to build a sense of community and fellowship in this town. It was funded by some of the starting members of Grand Forks that started this organization. When my parents died, every day I would hear from people, I'm lost, I don't feel like I'm part of this community anymore, we need your parents here, we need that. Are you the Smith kid? We need help from you. And I didn't know how to help them. Lately, with Robin David in part of the community and being in this position, that has stopped. Whether it's the immigrant picnics she holds in University Park with food from all over the country and speakers from all their languages that makes them feel like they're part of this community, or whether it's just changing the logo on the flag or the logo of Grand Forks to rainbow for Pride Month to make the LGBT people in this town feel like they're part of the community. The bottom line is, I guess, is that people don't come to Grand Forks and stay here because of the high salaries of the big nice buildings. They don't stay here for the beautiful weather. They stay here because of the community and the sense of fellowship and happiness that it brings. And with Robin David gone, we're going to lose that. And no matter how much money we spend on buildings and upgrading this town, we're going to lose the people. And if we lose the people, we're going to lose a lot in this community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'll speak to that quickly here. We're not ending the community roadmap. We're going to continue that within City Hall. I've taken the time to make sure all those elements can still be in place, led by myself. I think it's very important that the highest elected official in the city prioritizes welcoming, and that's something that I've decided to prioritize, and I believe that will be an even friendlier place going into the future, and I don't have any concerns about our welcoming ability. I'm very confident and steadfast in my convictions in that, and I hope to prove to you that we are going to continue that in the coming years. Thank you. All right, we got Frank Galbraith and Sarah, ladies first, so I'm going to let Sarah go first.
The Mayor and City Council, thank you for letting us speak today. I will decline on taking my mask off. I think what we need to do is realize that this money we're talking about in this budget for the position and the welcoming roadmap and Robin Davis is a little bit more than a quarter of the Alaris contingency money. So let's just put this in perspective that it's 0.03% of the budget and just a little bit more than $1 for each person in Grand Forks. So, now some of you may already know me. I find it very interesting that we're talking about this in the same room that also approved of Indigenous Peoples Day, and the fact that all these flags behind you are reminding me to give me strength at this moment. So my name is Sarah Galbraith. I moved to Grand Forks in '99 to pursue my education at UND. This town is not necessarily that welcoming. It's known as a sports town, a party town, and a predominantly white town. And I was able to find different spots at UND that made me feel very welcome. For the past 20 years, I've worked alongside many entities to make the community a stronger and more cohesive space. This has not always been easy. Trying to find individuals of underserved populations takes time and trust. These are not easily garnished by somebody who has never met nor worked with. I have seen generational trauma, systemic racism, marginalization, addiction, mental health, and many times helplessness by these populations that feel unheard. With the upcoming budget being talked about, I was hoping to lend my voice to these humans that often get looked over. The city of Grand Forks needs a lot of work when it comes to helping with our marginalized populations and recognizing their struggles. Grand Forks Welcomes is the first of its kind in Grand Forks. Due to a program like Grand Forks Welcomes, there are those that move to this dominantly populated white area and see a website dedicated to our Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC populations. This is crucial if we want to help others feel safe and that they are welcome in this space. Our BIPOC community in Grand Forks often feels looked over and unseen. I myself have been learning as fast as I can and having some very uncomfortable conversations about my own privilege and how to use my voice as white privilege. I was told the best way to make a point is to speak from your experience and your heart.
To make this point, I turn to the very community of racially and identity diverse humans I've worked with for the past 15 years. There has been a 10% society at UND since before I came to school here. This is for LGBT, started as an LGBT, now it's LGBTQIA+. This club has been active in the community at large. The leaders of this community have helped shape shy teen, such as myself, into a leader because I listened to what needs to be done. They wanted inclusion, so for the past 5 years, I have extended a welcoming hand to the mayor's office for Pride events, and each year they have received a calendar of drag shows and other events in our area. Our LGBTQIA+ community is important to Grand Forks and its surrounding areas. Creating safe spaces for these individuals and their families is not only key to a diverse and wonderful community, but imperative to a city that constantly expresses the need for new ideas and innovations to keep our population in Grand Forks. We even talked about it tonight. This leads to city growth and a guaranteed work populace. Our previous mayor was not only busy each and every event, but was unable to make Pride events until the Christmas Rex in 2019, last year, hosted a cookout. Even then, the visit was brief, but rememberable. What made the visit worthwhile was this kind woman walking from table to table with a sign of welcoming and getting to know those present at the event. Robin David continued to make others feel welcome at the event long after the mayor and his group had left, and she has continued to work with our group to see what else not only the BIPOC but LGBTQIA+ community can be included in further work with the city together. Not until Robin and I introduced ourselves did I even feel the inclusion in the mayor's office was even possible. My background as an ally, a friend, and a family member to not only BIPOC but also LGBTQIA+ has given me insight to how they are treated in schools, doctors' offices, and jobs. There are laws in place for protection, but these are not always recognized, nor are they always adhered to. We all saw gay marriage be legalized in Moorhead in 2013, and then the entire country in 2015. Grand Forks did nothing to show they were celebrating with our LGBTQI+ community during this triumphant time. Even myself, as a straight, cisgender woman, saw the beauty of this moment, yet deaf ears from my very own city as we returned from the enormous celebration that is Minneapolis Pride. 2019, I received a phone call from the Grand Forks City that the page was going to go rainbow for Stonewall's 50-year anniversary. I said I would be completely behind it, and I would support it completely. They also celebrated Grand Forks Pride. The request was assured, and yes, in August it did happen. National Pride Month was again acknowledged this year as well, although brief. Alerting all of those present now, as small as it may be, Pride will still be celebrated in Grand Forks the weekend of August 29th, and let's get that bridge to be rainbow. That'd be great. I say this all because as the new mayor, Mr. Bochensky, you have the chance to show more inclusion. This means not only making it to some events, but to also be aware that there will be times we want to talk to you personally, as well as in the offices that we feel do not have enough inclusion. Notice, even in this room, we don't have enough BIPOC representation. This means this could be a daunting task. I understand that. There are buildings to be reestablished. As far as your agenda, businesses I'm sure you've made arrangements to work with, and an eyesore of them all to save just a few examples of the things we've already expected of you. I have no absolute qualms to the fact that you are hitting the ground running. I say all these because there is no way that one human being can be attended to all of these things and give them each equal attention. I know this because I grew up in a political household and also have a lot of things I'm involved with. The word is delegate. We have members of the city council for not only voting, but to bring these light issues to our districts. This is definitely why the budget is not the sole responsibility of the mayor. So, don't worry, I'm about to be done. So why am I standing here? Robin David is trusted by the community. This trust was not easily gained. This past few months of Black Lives Matter and moving forward with the LGBTQI+ events, Robin has been there. Gaining trust with these populations is crucial, and to remove Robin David from her position would not only show that you aren't listening, but I don't personally think that you're not listening. I personally think you are listening to secondhand knowledge that is not as trusted as Robin's is in the fact that you think you can do it all. Remember when I said uncomfortable conversations, sitting and listening to someone telling me that I don't know everything and that I have to be quiet so others can be heard? Trust me, Mr. Bochensky, I know it's not easy. Again, I remind you how many white cisgender humans are responsible for the voices of our BIPOC and our LGBTQI+ communities, because they are not represented as they should be in Grand Forks. By limiting Grand Forks welcomes, you have pretty much slammed the door on the only program that comes out of City Hall specifically for these humans. So, Mayor Brandon Bocheski, I believe you see a budget and you want to fix it. Overcoming the stigma of expectations is something I know you are familiar with. During your campaign, you had a few of your own life's experience and see them differently, and we could all talk about privilege and how we can use them to our favor. That is not disrespectful to anyone in this room when we talk about privilege. I acknowledge that I myself have white privilege. That is why I'm standing here. It is also an observation that you are now our mayor. You now have the life's experience of our BIPOC community and our LGBTQ populations to draw upon. That is a very teachable place to be. Just like in sports, there are calls by a ref you may not like, or a coach you may not agree with. But in the end, you see the fairness of treatment and the ability of a stronger team. Grand Forks deserves to walk towards the end of 2020 as a stronger team. Age, sex, creed, skin color, religion, sexual identity should not be barriers to any office in Grand Forks. I am more than confident you see this and you're willing to work with all of us together with keeping Grand Forks Welcomes and Robin David as a key part of how to make these implementations run smoother. I'm not saying you can't do it all. I'm saying that with help, you can be better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Galbraith, did you have something to add? And we'll...
Good evening, Mayor Wojcinski, City Council. I'm going to be brief. I first moved up here in 1994 when the Air Force stationed me here at Grand Forks Air Force Base. It was my first 4 years, and I'll be honest, I felt less than welcome moving in here. We were referred to as basers. As a kid coming from the area of Philadelphia, have a little more diversity than we do up here in Grand Forks, let's be honest. My friends, fellow airmen who are people of color, walking around, yeah, we could tell we weren't welcome in some locations. But all that changed when I moved back here in 2001. And with the current climate and the current times, the elimination of this position I feel is a big mistake. 20 plus years in the military, I worked with many types of leaders and sat in many leadership roles myself. One of the biggest errors I saw from any leader, myself included, is when you take over a position, you hit the ground running, and you say, I'm going to change this. Sometimes what needs to happen is you need to sit back, observe, learn what the climate is, then sit down with your fellow leaders and make informed decisions on how to improve, how to change, not eliminate. Best example I can attribute to this was mine when I was in the military. With too many commanders used to eliminate a program called the military sponsor. That was to greet new airmen, new soldiers who arrived, so they could have an easy transition, be welcome into their military community. Well, every commander that came in shuffled it somewhere else, and that's how programs get lost. People get forgotten. My own sponsor never returned a phone call, never answered an email. So I got here, I was lost. I had no one to turn to. Don't do that to this community. Every good leader in the military and in the civilian world has a staff, has an aide, because they realize no matter their strengths, you can't do it alone. Even myself. When I was in a position of 6 sections and over 200 airmen, I had people that I knew could speak for me and act on my behalf. I encourage you, continue to do that. Use Robin David as an asset. Don't look at it as a weakness. This community needs strong leaders. I encourage you all to be those strong leaders and see the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll just speak to that for just a moment. We definitely have other assets within the city that we're going to be tapping. It's not going to be all on me. And thinking back to Sarah and what she had said and talking about heart and experience, I think it's important that I talk a little bit about my life experience, and I put life experience ahead of education and what you're learning in the classroom. I had a tough childhood. I grew up. My dad took off. We lived in poverty for a long time. Part of my playing career, I spent 8 years in Kazakhstan. It's a predominantly Muslim country. I went there the first year and really felt like I didn't belong, felt like I didn't know why I was there, felt like, what am I doing? I'm bringing my family here. It was pretty scary. The second year I started to engage more. Eventually I became friends with my neighbors, We grew a very strong community, friends that I still have today. The team voted me as their leader. I ended up being a fan favorite, not because I was the best player, but because of the engagement that I gave to the community. I still have on a daily basis people from that community calling me, wishing me well, wishing me success in the mayorship, asking me to go back there and be their mayor. I feel that my values, my Christian values, my empathy and my compassion are the best experience, and I'm fully confident that I can maintain this role and have Grand Forks be an even more welcoming place with my leadership going into the future, with the help of staff that have already been doing large parts of the welcoming roadmap. Thank you. Do we have another public comment?
Yep. I'm Mark Fromke, President of the North Valley Labor Council, AFL-CIO, and I think I should start with a little levity. When I walked in here and saw Ken sitting in your seat, I go, my God, I saw you a little over a month ago. This job really ages a person. You know, so anyway, you know, I'm here to talk about the Welcoming Committee and diversity. When we met with you, Mr. Mayor, right after the election, you know, we as organized labor expressed to you that we supported that committee. We supported, you know, the work that was being done, because in a certain way, labor also played a role in the resolution that was passed by this wise body, the City Council, on diversity and welcoming some years ago. And so, Mr. Mayor, just kind of our views is that we, under the old proposal, it was basically, from what we understand, a 5-year program, $35,000 to $45,000 a year, which to us is, you know, a fair amount, a decent amount. And today, from what we understand, the city of Grand Forks is willing $15K this year, $15K probably the next year. But that still leaves it short, because we're only at 2 years of the 5-year period. The other thing is for us, we really believe it should be within the city. And the reason I believe it that way versus, let's say, a nonprofit, is that when it's tied in with the city, you listen a little closer, you know, and so forth. And I think that's, you know, good for us as a community and people to listen good. Now, Mr. Mayor, you know, we're just getting to know each other as labor and you as mayor, and I'm glad you still got black hair. This guy, it took me 40 years to get this. I'd hope it wouldn't be a month. But we believe you would do a good job. We don't have any lack of faith in your commitment and your desires. But also, we believe as organized labor that to have somebody like a Robin David would be an asset to you and help you, in a sense, get your skills better at a faster rate, because, you know, she knows how to do this. It would be helpful. And instead of being a competitive thing, you know, if it's her or somebody else, it would be complementary and so forth. And so I know that Katie is working to put money together to keep this. And I know, you know, that we all try to make the best decisions we can. And sometimes, the plan just don't work as well as we hoped. And so to me, I think we should keep it in the city, because it just gives it more oomph, more power. Our city is going to grow, and it's going to also become, less white. And that's a good thing, And we're going to have more different cultures and so forth. And I think this committee, by keeping it under the city auspices, strengthens Grand Forks, makes Grand Forks a really leader. There's a Human Rights Commission in Fargo, and there's one in Moorhead. And what we're doing here in Grand Forks is a much, much better and have had, in my opinion, much more success. And so, Mr. Mayor, we surely hope you look at all these different, avenues, and hopefully that you would agree that we need to keep this program tied into the city and so forth. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think I'll just reiterate that I don't see any of these institutions any of these initiatives slowing down at all. I don't think there's any better image than the city having its top elected official leading these efforts, and I'm confident that we can pick up the slack within the city. And that's my leadership style, and I'm excited to move that forward and hopefully to new heights. So thank you. Do we have any other comments? Thank you.
No, I do not.
All right, now we'll open up to City Council. We're back to the budget. Councilmember Wagle, please.
I'll be brief. I've just got two. Thank you, Mayor Buczynski. I think you've put together a wonderful budget. It's difficult during times with COVID and everything going on that it makes this difficult no matter what you do. Whether right or wrong, there's always going to be an opinion, but I think you've done a good job of setting the foundation for this budget, and I appreciate the time being able to call you and talk to you and bounce ideas off you and work together to get some different things implemented. Ms. Storstad, Mr. Phelan, you guys have done great jobs in helping Mr. Buczynski get some stuff done. I really had one priority coming into this budget. I think the budget is great, but my one priority has been that public safety retirement plan. And I know, speaking with Mayor Buczynski, we talked a little bit about what if there was some sort of compromise? What if we took the $1,000 that the city employees were going to get that were in the public safety ND PERS plan, and we got rid of that, put that money towards converting them over. Right now, all of our city employees are under the same retirement plan. But our firefighters and our police officers, they face significant danger every single day they come to work. And in my opinion, we're telling them that your retirement is equal to everybody else. We've been talking about this for 2 years, and I feel like we've just punted it down the field continually. Or in Mr. Buczynski's case, we've iced the puck every time we've got a chance to do so. Something's not working. I really think we need to get it implemented. This year, if those public safety employees were to give back their $1,000, it costs the city $119,000. To me, that isn't a whole lot in the budget. I think I saw in here, and Maureen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've got 21% in reserves. Is that correct? For 2021?
Yes, the unassigned fund balance in the general fund is roughly 21%.
Okay. So that's something that we could make happen if we chose to do so.
If you want to, we were trying to maintain that balance. I think it would take more discussions with our public safety employees regarding your proposal and work through that, if that's something that the mayor and council wanted to put more work toward.
Absolutely. I think it would be important. If the city employees come back, I think there's all but 15 employees that are on the ND PERS plan. I think if the employees come back and say, no, Danny, we're not interested, we don't want that, then they can have their $1,000 for a raise. But if they come back and say, hey, no, this is a priority for us, this is what we want, think about the money we're saving. Chief Nelson, what does it cost to train a new police officer? And Chief Lorenz, I'd ask you the same thing for the fire department, to train a new firefighter.
To answer your question, Danny, as you look, you got to figure at least 12 weeks of academy, so that's 3 months of salary, along with uniforms, equipment, and everything else. I would say you're in that vicinity of 50,000 plus. I think would be a relatively conservative estimate.
Thank you.
Mayor Buczynski, Councilman Weigel, our answer would be very similar. We run an 8-week training academy. At that time, they're required to certify to a Pro Board 1 level certification, but throughout the course of their 1 year, they certify to a firefighter level 2 at the end of that year. So really, that whole first year of probation is training. And even after that, we train on a continual basis. It really is a career of training, but that first year is critical.
Perfect. It costs a significant amount to train our public safety personnel. And we're competing for good police officers. We're competing for good firefighters with other communities that offer a better retirement plan than the city of Grand Forks does. And so when we lose them, it costs us a significant amount of money. And if this is one little piece that we can implement for $120,000 this year, and if the city employees and the public safety concur, I think it's going to save us money in the long run. I think it gives us an opportunity to tell them, this is what we offer, this is why you should stick with the city of Grand Forks. Secondly, just real quick, is the $250,000 for the Alaris Center, is that considered a loan or something that they're going to be able to utilize if they need to?
It's budgeted as a contingency within Economic Development Fund with the thought that it would be a loan, but that would be something that could be discussed with council, but that's what the proposal would be. It would be a loan if needed to help cash flow through some tough times.
And how much do we have in economic development?
We have, I'm gonna pull my.
Just roughly, it doesn't need to be exact.
About $3.5 million, I believe, in that fund.
The more I've been thinking about the Alaris Center, I think that the Alaris Center is an entity owned by the taxpayers in the city of Grand Forks. Now, what's nice is it has its opportunity to generate its own revenue, which is similar to the city's water department. They can generate revenue to pay bills and expenses. But yet, if they needed something, I don't think we'd be offering it to the water department as a loan. I think we would just give them the money. And I would hope we'd do that with the Alaris Center. It is our facility. The taxpayers voted to help to build it and pay for it. And I would hope that instead of a loan, that it's our building, and we need to make sure it's financed the way it should be. So those are my two comments, and hopefully I can work with Mayor Buczynski and people in the future to see if we can get that plan implemented.
Thank you. Other comments from the council members at large?
I have some. This is Councilwoman Dockler on the phone. You beat me to the punch. You're a little quicker than me with my trigger finger for the phone. But I do have some comments that were submitted electronically that didn't make it into the agenda packet that I think, since they are unable, we have not figured out how to engage our community members and constituents online through Zoom. I would like to read them into the record, if that's possible.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, so the first one that I got is from Fame Henry Stringer, and I will just read it verbatim from the email. Hello, my name is Fame Stringer Henry, and I have been a part of this community since right after the flood in 1997, and all of my children were born here, so I consider this our home. I was writing to express my concern with the elimination of the Welcoming Community Coordinator position from the City of Grand Forks, as it's crucial to the success of the project. The city and partnering organizations have made a commitment to this project, and our community deserves to see it completed as designed, including with Robin David as the project coordinator, as she has been key to its implementation. The current social climate dictates that now is the right time to lean into the hard conversations that are congruous to the city growth and community building, not move away from them. all organizations, including but not limited to the City of Grand Forks, must be held accountable to their initial investment in the Welcoming Community Roadmap project. Council must reconsider this budget elimination, as not only is Robin the most qualified individual for this position, but it is also in horribly bad taste as the opposing candidate to be one of only 2 positions eliminated upon the new mayor's appointment. Thank you, Fame Stringer Henry, LBSW CNP. The second one that I have is from Mara Ferguson, and it reads, "Hello, my name is Mara Ferguson, and I am a resident of Grand Forks. I am writing to express that I do not support eliminating the Welcoming Community Coordinator position from the City of Grand Forks, as it is crucial to the success of the project. I worked on the Welcoming Community Roadmap as an intern through the summer of 2019. My personal experiences with the WCR have shown me how critical this work is for our community. The work being done by the Welcoming Community Coordinator is specialized work that is best performed by someone who has extensive training and experience in matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am disheartened to see that the decision was made to cut this position with no public input, as this project was carefully built over a matter of years with input from over 3 dozen agencies. This is a project that is important to the community, and I do not understand why it is being moved out of the city. The Welcoming Community Roadmap is in year 2 out of 5, and it is a shame that it is being disrupted before all of the objectives have been met. While I'm glad to see that the city intends to continue participation in the WCR, I do not agree with the decision to move it to another entity. Some questions I have are, why was this decision made? Is there a nonprofit that has agreed to take the lead on the WCR? And if not, what is the plan if none can be found? Thank you, Mara Ferguson. And the last one that I have that didn't quite make it into the packet is from Rachel Hafner. Dear Mayor Buczynski and City Council members, my name is Rachel Hafner, and I am the Executive Director of the ARC, Upper Valley and Grand Forks. I am writing on behalf of my organization to express that we do not support the elimination of the Welcoming Community Coordinator position from the City of Grand Forks, as it is crucial to the success of the full implementation of the 5-year Welcoming and Community Roadmap Plan that has been a collaboration of more than 17 organizations who believe that all Grand Forks citizens should have a sense of equity and inclusion. As an organization that focuses on human rights and inclusion as a mission, we believe that this project and position is vital to the community of Grand Forks. I am requesting that this letter be read during the public comment section of any city meetings that are forthcoming where this issue may be discussed. I am available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for taking the time to consider the value of this important project to our community. Together we can make Grand Forks a place where everyone feels welcome and included. Sincerely, Rachel Hafner, Executive Director of the ARC Upper Valley. So those are the only comments that I had that didn't make it into the agenda that we have. And then I did have a couple of things that I wanted to ask about from the budget and our discussions. The first one is about the housing initiative to create affordable loans. I think that's really exciting. One of the questions that I do have is that you had, Mayor Buczynski, you had referenced the north end. Is there a specific area that these loans would only be available to use in, or are these loans going to be available to use throughout the city?
They'll be throughout the city.
Okay. That is excellent. And then do you have any more information yet? Because it sounds like it's a new initiative. So if you don't, that's not surprising at this point. But
yeah,
if
we've
you do,
got information on that with the Housing Authority and the Land Trust. They received a federal grant that they're going to pair with our funds to be able to offer a program under HUD guidelines. So they'll be, we're hoping to expand the program because under the HUD guidelines, the houses that they would only be able to use this on would be of 220 and less, with 80% or less of median income. So we're hoping at this, as a city, to expand that up to the median household cost in Grand Forks, house cost, which I think is around $270, and expand it to 120% of their median household income. So we're hoping to be an add-on and make it a more expansive program so it's used.
awesome. One of the questions I have for you then is, where would people apply for that kind of thing? Is it going to be through the Grand Forks Housing Authority or through the Land Trust? Where would they?
Yeah,
I mean, I know that they're partners.
through the Land Trust. Emily over there is going to house it within her office. We've been working with Meredith Richards on it as well, but I think if they're willing to step up and house the program, we'll aid them in any way they need, but it'll be housed through them.
That's wonderful. The second thing that I would like to talk about is the removal of the position for the Welcoming Community Roadmap Coordinator. I am not in support of removing it. I do think that it is important that it stays within the city. I really believe that cities have a unique role as a connector of services. The housing, the welcoming efforts within the city allows the city to serve a unique role as a cross-sector connector of welcoming work. Immigration, integration, and welcoming in nature is cross-departmental, and it interweaves into all aspects of the society and the services that we provide, and that go beyond what any single nonprofit encompasses. So building out welcoming work from the city would help create continuity across all sectors of the community, as well as make sure that all of the roadmap is achieved according to plan. One of the issues, I believe, with taking it away from the city and not having a centralized coordinator is going to be that all of these little pieces are going to start slowly falling away because we're all busy. We all have jobs on top of the things. If things are delegated to department heads within the city, they also have other responsibilities. And at the end of the day, we have only a set amount of hours to get things done, and we have to prioritize what they are. And so if you are any kind of management position or leadership position, oftentimes a good chunk of your hours and your time is used to actually put out fires of whatever nature that may pop up. And you have to prioritize that because you have to deal with the most pressing thing at the time. Now, while I believe that welcoming work and the diversity and inclusion aspect is pressing and is important, it's not as important as somebody got into a automobile accident because they didn't see some truck on the site of something. You know, you're going to respond to that quicker. And unfortunately, those things don't generally take 15 minutes of your time. It generally ends up being a few hours, if not a few days, in working with whatever situation that it is. And then the welcoming inclusion work kind of gets pushed down on the list of importance and in time of when it is accomplished. And so it's not that I would doubt, you know, any of our city staff would not be interested or care about this work. It's just rather a matter of time and priority for the other jobs and responsibilities that they have. And for you too, Mr. Mayor, I also think that it would be difficult moving forward to take on all of those responsibilities. You truly are going to be the face of Grand Forks, as it should be with the mayor and a figurehead. However, it does mean that you are going to be responsible for many, many things. And while I would absolutely welcome and love for you to continue working and being passionate about diversity and inclusion work, you are going to find that your time is going to be slowly taken up in some of these other roles that the mayor has. I know that you ran on an economic platform to bring people to Grand Forks and businesses to Grand Forks to strengthen our community, and that's great. I absolutely love that. I want that to happen. But when it comes to the welcoming roadmap piece of where they come into that, it's about training and it's about building workshops and building policies with different entities, helping to create startup loans and systems that are approachable to all different kinds of populations. And we're not just talking about immigrants and refugees and new Americans, we're also talking about people in low economic situations, people with disabilities, people with mobility issues, people, just people in general. Community is a messy, messy thing. Lots of different people, lots of different needs. And to have a coordinator position that is specifically designated to work on those things and who also knows that they can reach out to you, a mayor who cares about the same things, and say, hey, Mr. Mayor, I think this would be really great if you joined us on this conversation, or if you came, or if you had this conversation with this person. But at that time, they're able to kind of take on the load and the work of those things. And it isn't necessarily something that you're dealing with every hour of the day putting out the fires for, when, again, I think you're going to be responsible for many other things. I would really appreciate having ongoing conversations with you about this, because this is just our first look at the budget. I haven't even actually had my hands on it yet. Councilwoman Mock is very kind and going to be dropping it off for me. You know, so these conversations are going to be ongoing in the future. And so I would really appreciate being able to engage with you in that manner regarding this. And then, like the other ones, as I see the budget and I look through it and I have questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I definitely hope we are able to work together well in the future. We may disagree on some things, but we can certainly work together. I guess first thing I would say is I'm definitely hoping that under my leadership there will be less fires to put out. it's all about prioritization, but I've also talked to city staff, and they're more than confident that they can absorb the additional workload along with myself. We're coming from a mayor that worked 8 hours a week, and now I'm full-time. And full-time to me means 50 or 60 hours a week. So that frees up about 52 hours that I'm able to give a week to the community. The reason that I ran was to help the community that's been good to me, and the community that I live in. So I'm going to lead it the way that I see fit, and this is part of it. Thank you.
I guess I would just say that, I agree with you. It's hard to put a value and a number on certain things. And so I would strongly encourage just continuing to have this dialogue about the things that we value as a community as a whole. Because you're right, we'll have different ways of approaching it and different ways of working it. But that means we really do need to come to the table then and talk about it as a collective.
Thank you. Did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
All right. Any other council members at large? We'll do, you want to go last? You second to last and last, yeah. Ken or Brett, did you guys have anything at this time? You can definitely submit any concerns as well.
Nothing at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I really don't have very much either. I mean, the things I have are fairly small and pieces of this thing. I'm worried about the prairie dog funds, but I know we rely on those, and what that will be in the future are going to be important. We can obviously adjust. We'll have to adjust depending on how much we get in, but we have a lot of projects that we would like to do, and I think they hopefully will come through, but again, no guarantee. And I know you looked at some projections in the out years, and I'm hoping that type of thing can happen too. One of the other projects, and maybe a little bit minute, was the Demers Avenue beautification project that we were going to do as a part of the Demers Avenue reconstruction. Was that coming out of beautification funds?
Do you mean the light pillars, Ken?
Yeah.
Those were out of the street fund, as I recall, Maureen. And so we've spoken with Mayor Buczynski, and he's still pondering how to move forward with that project in 2020. The money was, as you recall, I think we set aside $450,000. I think it came in a little bit less than that. We've been in discussions with Mayor Buczynski. We anticipate bringing that back this fall, still in 2020, for further discussion and engagement on that particular project.
Yeah, and that'd be great. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do know we spent a lot of money on the horizontal beautification, and there's a small amount in the vertical part too that I think is an enhancement to the community. But obviously at these times we're in tough times. So what you can really do with that is probably yet to be determined. So. And the only last thing I'd follow up with what Mr. Weigel says on the Alaris Commission and what we were looking at trying to do that. I'm your representative on that. I really believe the Alaris Commission delivers to this community in economic returns that is very, very beneficial across the board. And I know the people that work there, Anna and her staff, have done a tremendous job trying to make a go of it in this time when there's so many of the events have been canceled and the impacts to the community. But we know a major concert really does have a return. And so I appreciate the budget that we have put together to date. I can tell you the commission members are very careful. They're not trying to abuse what they do. I mean, I love the idea of having a grant versus a loan, but I mean, that's how committed they are, is they want to find a solution to keep that going, bring the economic benefit back to the community in any way that we can. And so we're very, very aware of the budget and want to make that work for the city. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veen. Any other council members at large?
Just a quick comment. I appreciate all the work that you have done and your team has done on the budget. I do want to say that I've received a great deal of communication, I imagine everyone on the council, regarding the welcoming program, and I feel it's very important that we're not discontinuing that. I do want to say that I don't understand the responsibilities enough to make a judgment, but I am excited to spend the next few days maybe discussing the responsibilities and the role and how you see yourself acting in it. And I think if the role is something that you're ready to accept, I think there's no better position than to have the mayor leading the charge, assuming that the responsibilities are known and everyone is comfortable with what that entails. So I look forward to learning more about the position, and then I support if you're willing to take upon all of those responsibilities.
All right, let's, I think we've gotten everyone, so Vice President Mock.
Thank you. And that was the perfect handoff. I think it's been hammered, so I'm not going to say too much about it, but it might be a source of comfort to people if you are committed to that position, if maybe we make up some goals for the next year and how we're going to approach that to make sure that it doesn't slip through the cracks and that we have a measurable marker for any subsequent years if we need to add that position back in or a different position that helps in other capacities. Maybe that's something that could be a project through this preliminary budget process, that we know what our markers of success are for that position. Going to page 11.
Are you on the slides or the
On
binder?
the very beginning, from the general fund highlights.
Okay.
So I think it's important we keep the social detox funding in there. We do have other issues, even though most of our public health conversations are about COVID right now. That mental health, the $20,000 for the police department, that was additional because of our shooting event. Is that correct? Is that additional funding to make available to police officers that may be struggling?
Ms. Mock, members of council, I'm actually going to let Chief Nelson speak to that.
Okay.
Vice President Mock, with all due respect, no, that was, that initiative was well underway prior to Officer Holte's shooting. Basically, what we've tried to look in the nationwide trend as law enforcement is to work and developing the whole officer concept, developing a resilient officer, getting past the point of being physically fit, but being spiritually fit, mentally fit, and physically fit to be able to, number one, do your job, and number two, be able to return yourself to your family and be able to have a quality of life. So the thing that we were kind of missing as we started doing research through all the other projects is we have a mandatory yearly workers' comp physical for the presumptive clause under WSI. So what we've asked to do with this $20,000 is to put a psychological screening in there as well. There's safeguards built in for the employee. The only time that we would be notified as a department if there was an issue on fitness for duty. Otherwise, it's designed around to give the employee more of a chance to voice any concerns that they have, and also for them to be screened, and if something pops up, to allow the psychologist to work with them to develop strategies to ensure that they're a resilient member of our police department, a great family member, and a quality citizen. So,
Did we have any budget amendments to address mental health issues that police department might have? Do we need
I know
something?
we discussed it and asked for it to be put into this budget yet. We have not moved forward with the program past the concept. It's all dependent upon funding right now. We could make the program happen tomorrow if the money is there by utilizing our current psychologist, who happens to be Dr. Philippi, who benefits us greatly as a police department in the fact that he's a former police officer before he finished up his doctorate. So by working with him, he understands. We use him for pre-employment screenings. He was our primary mental health provider post-shooting, and he would still be our primary mental health provider for these screenings as well.
My concern is just that everyone is taken care of and can have those resources if they need them.
And that's the goal that we're trying to have, is to work on the holistic concept of officer wellness.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
On page 15, we talked about the corporate center 1 and 2. We do have potential buyers for those, or we're still working on those contracts?
Do you want to speak to that, or?
Yeah, we're currently in meetings now trying to, one of the buildings is going to be condoed off, so we're working at, it'll be not in whole, the building, but it'll be condoed off and sold. And then we still need a buyer for the other building, but we're in the process of getting appraisals and we'll work from there.
Moderately confident that
I think
We'll
we're pretty
have some
confident we'll
buyers.
have something by the spring, and the Cirrus building, for sure, I believe will sell. It doesn't make any sense for them to continue paying rent when they can purchase it, the building, at the price that was contractual, so.
And this was the first year that was eligible, or 2021 is the first year it's eligible?
I believe only one is actually eligible to this.
It's actually eligible, I believe, the end of this year, 2020,
year.
but we
Yeah.
expect it in 2021.
Sure.
Yeah, one's in October, I think one just became available, so.
Okay. So we haven't been sitting on them for years, this is the
No.
first kind of eligibility. And then with the Grand Forks Herald building, are there plans for renovations for that technology incubator?
Todd, why don't you have you talk to that, you were at the EDA grant meeting today, so.
Mayor Borchensky and Councilwoman Mock, what we are looking at currently right now, we've been able to resituate ourselves here in City Hall. And so part of the, if you look back to when we looked at the Grand Forks Herald building, it was probably more of a collaboration center with partners like UND, Grand Forks Public Library, and others. What we're proposing, there is an EDA, Economic Development Administration grant. It's a federal grant. It's an 80-20 grant. Generally, $3 million of a grant. So we're looking at creating, similar to what Mayor Brown spoke of in a State of the City, as a tech hub. But what the mayor has done is really focused us on being that tech hub and more of an accelerator in that building. So, as you recall, we had a lot of terrific public spaces entering that building, from huddle spaces to conference rooms, and then an event space at the very end of the building where the community room is. Since we're not going to need staff space, we're going to reconfigure ourselves here. Those will be technology suites for private sector entities. And on the second floor, we'll continue to have the high-tech boardroom, and then there will be further tech suites on that second floor. So it's going to be more refocused, still with the EDC as a partner, the Herald still in the building, but more as an accelerator, and accelerating getting entities like Air Autonomy. So the city of, for example, the city of Grand Forks, or I should say the Jobs Development Authority, they received a LIFT grant. The JDA matched that in half. They're growing. I think they're at 10 to 15 employees. The goal of this community should be to grow them to 50 to 100 employees. And so the point of this accelerator is to really accelerate them into this building and beyond, and to continue to do that over and over again as we continue to get technology partners, and probably with a focus of UAS as one of our prime partners. So it's still going to do what it's going to do. It's going to be more focused on technology. It's going to be focused on UAS, and it's going to be focused on accelerating entities like technology companies. And it's something that we've been told we do not have in Grand Forks. We have co-working spaces, we have incubators, but we don't have accelerators. If you look to the city to the south, they have an accelerator with lots of bandwidth, with lots of upload and download capabilities that could be partnered with a private sector entity. So this is our niche that we have. When we've had conversations with the Economic Development Administration, they're high on projects like this. It's in a built environment, in a building that's called the Grand Forks Herald, probably a diminishing entity. With the new economy, we have this new opportunity to drive economic value in there. So it's really exciting. It's in a Renaissance zone. It's in a federal opportunity zone. So there's lots of positives, and it's really the centerpiece to our technology hub in the downtown. Still partnering with UND, but in a different way.
I think it's important to also know we were in negotiations already with a onboard computing drone company, KSI, that's expecting to have somewhere between 10 and 15 employees within a year, who's been gracious enough to kind of be in there, despite knowing that they might have to move around a little bit as we do renovations, and we're continuing to meet with, we're almost doing it ahead of time, more so than we wanted, but if the opportunities came, we felt we had to take them.
And do we
And maybe, Mayor Buczynski, just a timeline. So we anticipate this fall submitting an EDA application, so it'd likely go through the Growth Fund and the JDA. So right now, we're formulating that grant request. There's CARES funding right now for projects like this, public works projects like this that are accelerators. So we're going to submit under the CARES Act, but there's also going to be additional appropriations come in October. They're regular appropriations. So I think we'll have 2 bites of the apple. We'll have CARES funding potential, but then on October 1, what they've assured us is that they get regular appropriations, and this really fits their niche. So there's no guarantees in life, but that's where our focus is right now.
So are we waiting on renovation costs to see how all of these shake out, and then we'll see?
I think it's going to be a similar renovation cost that we have, but instead of having city in an office suite, it's going to be more for companies that come to town, say they got 5 people, they need a space, they need to get in right away, they need all the high-tech features. This is shovel-ready. It's like we always think about manufacturing, we got to have water, sewer, and all these incredibly boring things that you need to have people locate. This is in a similar way. It's a building where you can just come in and start and hopefully expand sooner rather than later outside the building.
If we don't get the 80/20 grant, it would be my recommendation to sell the building. So without that build out and that grant money, I don't think it's an asset we should be holding.
Is that your question, Kyle? Okay. Page 16 with the siren project, are we coming up with, I guess, a contingency in case the prairie dog allocation doesn't hit 2.5 million?
Yes, so we do, this is our top priority, number 1, for prairie dog funds, when we hopefully will receive. If we do need to find funds prior to that, we're going to have to be looking to some cash balances to get us through that time period. But we do, and we do have some grant dollars too that's going to help cover some of the cost of grants. But our cost, as you can see in the prairie dog projection, is about 1.5 million for those radio communications. And like I said, that'll be top priority of those prairie dog funds, with the remainder going towards street capital projects.
And then with the beautification funds, I think at one point we had a committee recommendation that beautification balance dollars would eventually go towards town square renovations and rehabilitations. Where does town square land? Should that be in with capital improvements? Should that be in a different area? Do we have that included anywhere?
I think for the time being, we're going to do just kind of a small rehab. We want to get the water wheel going. We're going to fix that pond, or it's leaking, so they can't pump back out of it. So we're going to get that fixed. We estimate maybe a $10,000 or $15,000 fix, and we're going to replace those tarps that are in there. It's just going to be a cosmetic fix, but I think it's going to have to, under the current budget conditions, I think that's going to have to be kind of a 10-year fix, and we'll.
And I don't necessarily have a
forward.
problem with that for the short term. I would like to see it accounted for somewhere in the long term, because I think long term, we probably have more substantial fixes. But I don't want to.
I do think long-term, we would hope that that would be, kind of funded by a donor of some sort to put money in there. I mean, it would be nice to have some sort of contingency, but I don't see that being a $5 million or a $8 million project at any time. I think that's a lot.
As Mayor Buczynski said, Councilmember Mock, we are planning to make some minor modifications, all what the public library did, just let's move the town square forward maybe 5-10 years. It was upwards of a $5 million project, and so we have changed course on that, and we're going to get it renovated, but more in a public library kind of sense and not a total rehab.
And then the last question I had, at some point, can we get a breakdown of like the street funds and what's going towards street maintenance and rehabilitation versus reconstruction?
Sure, and you do have a detail of the CIP in the binder. It should break
Okay.
that out for you, but just let me know if you have any questions when you take
Okay,
a look at that.
wonderful.
The slide did, I believe, show you page numbers, but let me know if you have
Okay.
any questions on that. Maybe if I could just go back real quick, we do have, I believe, 500,000 of the Demers streetscape in there to Mr. Veen's question. And Ms. Dockler, I apologize if not all those citizen comments got out there. I know we had attached comments on Friday and added some more late this afternoon, but thank you for reading any that we may have missed. I thought we had them all in there, so thank you.
Council President Sandy.
Thank you.
Save the best for last.
I'm sorry, Ms. Mock. The peculiarities in the mosquito control budget had me wrapped around the wheel, and so I didn't hear you when you asked about the corporate center. Did you ask about both corporate 1 and 2 and the potential sales?
Yes, just that I just questioned if we had buyers lined up for those two.
So the answer was we'll hear more about that toward the end of the year? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think we're taking meetings already just to see where people are at. But I think
That's fine. I was just looking for if anybody had any percentage concept of, we're 50/50 we're going to sell them, or 80/20, or is there any, because we keep talking about big numbers. We got all this money, but we haven't actually put any money into the bank yet. So I'm just trying to get an understanding.
I would say not 100%.
Not 100%, right, okay. All right, well, I'm glad to hear, Mr. Mayor, I'm glad to hear you're working on it. I do also think that staff and yourself have worked very hard putting together a very comprehensive budget. I'm sure this couldn't have been easy for you in your first go-around. I did have some questions, specifically the mosquito control budget. I have two questions. How is it, when we're charging a fee on the utilities, how is it that the revenue is going down rather than up?
President Sandy, members of council, it's going to, let me find that slide here.
Well, it's page 367
You're referring
on your
to
budget book, if you will.
the revenue. So we do have some slight COVID impacts budgeted in here if there's any closures or things. I don't believe it's very big of a number, but
No,
that may have.
It's minimal, it certainly is, but if we know how many homes and apartments, and we know how many people are getting a utility bill, and we know what the cost is on every single utility bill, and I'm pretty sure we added commercial and residential homes this last year. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of why that number's going down versus going up.
And if I could just follow up with you for more
Nope.
detail, but.
Certainly, no problem.
I don't think it's much of a difference, it's just.
And I'm not saying you're right, it's minuscule. In terms of total budget, it's irrelevant. I just find it interesting when we know that we're adding houses.
Yeah, so what we did figure is just 2.5%, just due to impacts on
Got it.
collections and
Okay.
accounts, so.
One follow-up question related to that is, if it's paid on the utility bill, so do we treat the mosquito control as a utility essentially?
Essentially, I mean, it's an enterprise fund, it's on your utility bill, the fee for service.
How is it possible that we have exactly $300,000 as our opening budget?
It's an estimate of the cash balance.
It's an estimate.
Correct, to start
Okay.
the next budget year.
Very good. That is excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Regarding the Alaris Center, I'm not going to belabor this. I have what I believe is a relatively simple question. Is we have a reserve fund balance projected for 2029 of $36 million and change. Does that amount sustain the building?
Mr. Sandy, members of council, we're trying to set aside as much as we can into that future reserve. Will it be enough? I don't know. The important thing is we're trying.
Guess.
We're working on a plan. for 2029 as we look at the changing assumptions. And I believe, we may look to need to supplement with maybe part of the economic development sales tax or facility fee. We'll work through all that. Right now, what we're projecting with current revenue projections for sales tax, and of course, that has many unknowns. We look to about that 600 and some thousand a year on that balance. When we look at, you'll see in your handout there, projections ranging from, 300,000 to 900,000 a year for regular capital maintenance. So, we're working through that, and we have some time, but we'll continue to monitor that. And what we have done in the past few years is try to, especially when we refinance that bond, as you saw, put more dollars aside into that future capital reserve, trying to balance current capital needs with future. And you'll see a change in the projection from a year ago to today. Those sales tax projections and assumptions can impact that projection and what we show to be able to set aside. So many unknowns at this time. We'll continue to monitor that and work through that.
I'm very concerned about the financial health of the Alaris Center. I have very, very little confidence that we are going to have enough money set aside by 2029 to allow us to continue to operate that building without significant financial influxes, without significant additional money added in. I don't believe we can sustain that building. I was estimating maybe 2035. I think it's probably longer than that, but not a whole lot. I'm really concerned that we're going into, what I don't want to do is put the University of North Dakota in a position where we can't sustain a facility that they need for their athletic program. So I don't know what to do about that. I feel like I've been saying this for 10 years. And it's because I have been. I've been saying this for 10 years, and now we're only 9 years away. I very much appreciate the people that work, and Mr. Veen's work on the Alaris Commission is invaluable to us, and I really, really think that Spector's doing a great job. And Anna and her team are working very hard, and they give me a sense of confidence. That they know what they're doing, and everything's going to be okay. I just keep looking at the numbers, and I know everything is not going to be okay. So I need somebody to figure out how to make it okay.
Do you want Anna to, it might not make you confident, but would you like Anna to speak briefly on that? Or?
No, let's not put it, that's okay. That's okay.
If it makes you feel any better, President Sandy, when I'm looking back at 2013, when we were projecting out to 2019, how much we'd have set aside for cash, for reserve, and a cash balance, we're pretty much where we thought we'd be at this point as far as what's being set aside. So if that gives you any level of comfort, then the bigger impact is what's to come and what are those projections.
I certainly do have a comfort level knowing that everyone we have working on it has the right intentions in mind and is putting their all in with their heart and their mind, and so I certainly know, and we're again very fortunate that we have so many very dedicated, hardworking, smart people on the commission helping. I just don't want to get in a situation where something dramatic has to happen. The only other question I have for you, Mr. Mayor, for right now, do you have any general plans for all the money that we have in the beautification?
No, I think that's the point. That's why we're not adding to it. So.
Yeah, but we have lots of money there. Yeah. We should be using it, in my opinion. I mentioned Mike up on the north end of town. I'm singling him out because I know that he's been working on some things that I think is great. I think that if there are other areas of town where people are making their own personal investment, it'd be great to have that public-private partnership, and if people are putting their money in, the city come and help them with a little bit, kind of the way we did with the university today, same concept. I think it works really well.
I think that's a great idea. We can definitely put that out there.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, I think for now we'll move on. We'll try to move through the rest of this fairly quickly.
All right, sorry, Mayor. 3.1, public hearing and second reading of ordinance amending zoning map, JRPUD Concept Development Plan Amendment Number 4, located along 44th Avenue South between South 34th Street and South 30th Street.
Mayor Bochansky, council members, I guess I'm just here to answer any questions. You've seen this item already once for preliminary, so it's gone through preliminary and final at our Planning and Zoning Commission, so I would entertain any questions on item 3.1. Staff is recommending approval as submitted in the staff report.
All right, do we have any public comments on that?
No,
Do we
sir.
need any? Okay. All right, any comments from council? No. Do we have any motions? Mr. Sandy, motions. Mr. Wagle, seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
3.2 is public hearing and second reading of ordinance amending zoning map, Gateway Planned Unit Development, Concept Development Plan located at 4001 Gateway Drive.
Okay, this item, if you recall, is a conversion of a former hotel on Gateway from essentially just a standard hotel to residential dwelling units, studio size. And again, this has gone through planning, zoning, and the city council once. Staff is recommending approval as submitted in the staff report.
Public comments?
We've received none.
All right.
I've received none.
Yep, please.
Was this a developer-led request, or did the city lead this?
Yes, Prairie Development is, this is their project.
Is there any effort to identify other areas that might benefit from something similar to this?
I think it's certainly something that we should keep in mind. You know, whether it's specifically a hotel that's out of business or something to that.
This seems like a really good way to revitalize an area and utilize something that's underutilized as a new purpose.
And just adding more warm bodies to that one commercial area. So.
I'll move approval.
Second.
And Mayor Bochansky, if you could just, before you approve, actually open the public hearing.
Public hearing's open.
And
Again?
then close. We just need to officially open the public hearing and close before we
Sounds
move
good.
approval.
So we have a motion from Ms. Mock, a second from Mr. Kwame. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
3.3, public hearing and second reading of an ordinance amending the zoning map, Skidmore addition. This item should be tabled for 1 month.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we are asking to table, as it was tabled at our Planning and Zoning Commission.
All right, do we need a public hearing to table?
We do not need a public hearing on this one.
Sounds good. All right, do we have any comments? President Sandy moves table, Vice President Mock seconds. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
And 3.4, public hearing and second reading of ordinance amending street and highway plan to dedicate the right-of-way on the plat of Prairie's 11th edition. Public hearing and second reading of ordinance annexing all of Prairie's 11th edition.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Council, this one's a little unique. We did receive a letter from Mr. Prairie. He wants to formally withdraw both the plat of Prairie's 11th edition and the annexation, so staff would entertain a motion to formally, permanently withdraw the plat and the annexation from the agenda. At some point, the developer will come back with a different revised plan, but for now, these will not be moving forward.
All right, any comments or motion to move to approval? Mr. Weigel motions. Mr. Conley seconds. I don't think we need a public hearing on this one. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Okay.
All right. Mayor, do you want me to go through if anybody wants to pull action items?
Yeah, right now, we were planning on 4.6 was the only one that we were going to pull because that one was going to get tabled till August 10th. Unless there's any other items that any council members wish to pull. So we'll move for 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, and 4.10. Looking for a motion. Mr. Weigel motions. Mr. Veen seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. The motions carry.
All right, then 4.6, conversion of Oxford and Princeton streets from one-way to two-way traffic.
Do we have any comments on that? I think we had some neighborhood comments where they were looking for a little bit more time to review that, so we were going to table that and give them a chance. Mr. Grasser, I don't know that we need any more comments on that. If you want to, we'll just move to table unless somebody has a
I'll make a motion to table.
motion to table from Mr. Veen, seconded by Ms. Bach. Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries. That's it for action items.
If we could just get a motion to introduce ordinance for 4.10. Thank you.
I'll move approval.
Second, we have a motion from Mr. Weigel, second from Ms. Mock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Now that's it for action items.
Informational items, 5.1, HR quarterly staff report, second quarter of 2020. And if there's no questions, 5.2 is statement of changes in cash balance as of March 31st.
No.
Citizen comments are attached, but we already reviewed that. They're all related to the budget, so all of that should have been heard already. So 7.1, vendor list and engineer's estimate as presented.
Do we have a motion to approve to pay the bills, Dana, as you say?
Pay the bills.
Dana motions, Ms. Mock seconds. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same. Motion carries. Last 7.2, I'll take this one, Maureen. 7.2 is the minutes from June 1st. Do we have any comments, or do we want a motion to approve those? Mr. Weigel motions, and Mr. Kafami seconds. All those in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed, the same. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Todd, any comments tonight?
Just one, we will have the budget on the committee of the whole meeting next week, so some of the questions that were asked will have more of a work session next week, Monday, in advance of that city council meeting. So if you have any questions during this week, just if you wouldn't mind shooting us the questions, and we'll be prepared for answers, and as part of kind of more of a work session.
All right, thank you, Todd. Agenda number 9, council members at large, any comments? Seeing none, Vice President Mock.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, do we have one?
Yeah, if I may quickly.
Mr. Weber, please.
Yes, this last spring, due to concerns about COVID-19, the annual spring cleanup needed to be postponed. My understanding is that staff are looking into bringing that back for possible August or September. Is that correct? Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I think right now we're looking at probably early September is the hope.
Wonderful, thanks. That's all.
Vice President Mock.
I won't say much, just thank you for all the citizen engagement. It's always good to hear from people, and hopefully we can help those in the university area with that project as well, and we'll look forward to more questions.
Thank you, President Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, appreciate all the hard work on the budget. It's going to be fun this week, studying it and sending questions to yourself and Maureen. In case anyone is wondering, President Armacost is a board member of the Aerospace Foundation, so I essentially report directly to him and the others on the foundation, and in which case I didn't want anyone thinking that I was being influenced regarding the vote but I am fully supportive of what the council did tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, President Sandy. I would kind of echo what Jeannie said. I really enjoyed the civil engagement tonight. I'm glad that people came in and were able to voice their opinions. We may disagree, but that's the way government's meant to be, so I was happy to see that. Oh, Mr. Veen,
I'm
please.
sorry, I'm out of order here. I just wanted to say one thing, that Anna and her staff have put together a bi-weekly report that we could easily, I haven't always shared that, but have that available with what's happening and the events that are going on, those that have been canceled, the impact of that. They're working super hard to try to make that be successful, and there's a lot of good information, especially with COVID, what events they can have coming up depending on the size and all of that, and there's so many unknowns out there that it's really a challenging time. So I understand what Mr. Sandy is saying. We were on target to actually do exceptionally well, be record-breaking this year, not only in events, but I think income and all of that. And obviously, we're in a time of adjustment now. And so we do need to look at what we can do long-term. But really, up until now, we were on target to be exceptionally successful, if not more than we've ever been in the past. Like so many things, we'll have to figure out a way to adjust, and the commission will work with the council and yourselves to try to be just what we said we would be. So thanks.
Thank you. So I'll just echo that one more time so I get the last word, but thanks to the people that spent the time and sat and came to the podium. I know that's not easy to do, so I appreciate that. All right, we'll move to number 10. We have a motion to adjourn by President Sandy. Who wants to second it? Anybody? Second. Going once, going twice? Oh, we got a second. Okay. Councilmember Veen seconded it. Meeting is adjourned.